Welcome in, everybody, to another meeting of the Vintage Anime Club, where we talk about the great and sometimes not so great anime of yesteryear, all the while reminiscing with a bottle or two or three of wine. Or five.
Have we hit five?
I lost count.
We did four once.
We've never done
we
five.
did four. Oh, okay.
Have we never done five? I feel like when I'm here, we've gotten pretty high.
I think that might have been the four.
That's
Offline.
a different podcast.
Yeah, that's
Hold on. High off wine.
High in number of bottles.
Yeah.
I'm one of your hosts, Ed. We have got quite a crew today. We'll go around the table. We're joined by Dennis.
Hi.
Garrett.
Hello.
Kate.
Hello.
Diana.
Woo.
Sam.
Hello.
And Han.
Hello there.
It's been a while since we've heard from a couple of you guys.
Oh, yeah, we've been kind of hiding out.
My cup is empty.
Oh,
Well, we got to
I'll
fix
work on
that problem.
That was quick.
Listen, this waits for no woman or man.
Yeah, Diana's cup got
Stretch,
empty about 3 or
stretch
4
that.
ago, and then she never came
Your
back.
cup runneth
Oh, yeah,
over.
well, let's polish off that bottle.
My cup doth indeed runneth over. Just
So-
ask Kotomine.
Yes, indeed. We are taking a quick detour from our run of Nazca this week, but before we get into our main topic, let's go around the table and talk about any change in what we're watching or any...
Yeah, what's one thing you would like to call out this week about anime?
Let's go in reverse order, Han.
What was it? So what the...
What you
are
want?
you
What you're watching right now? Is there any show you want to
something
bring up?
Mention?
I haven't. What was on the other ones? I guess still watching Ancient Magus Bride.
Mm-hmm.
Still up in the air with Darling Franks, whatever.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, I can't
Uh,
stop that.
Watching Late Back Camp. Is anyone watching that?
No.
No,
What's that about?
I heard decent things about it though.
Late Back Camp is just a very cute little camping anime, and it's somewhat educational because they actually go over like different kinds of tents, different kinds of like kindling and stuff. So it's minorly, slightly educational about camping.
Okay.
So it's a bunch
How
of girls
random.
who are in a outdoor camping club, and their things of trying to go out camping, like getting equipment, figuring out how to do it on a budget,
Oh, okay.
carrying stuff. So it's just interesting. And they have some stuff that is not stuff I learned when I was a Boy Scout out here because Japan has a very different climate than here.
Well, and I'm sure like the culture of camping outside is probably different in Japan than here.
Maybe. But the main thing is like the information they go over like doesn't apply here because like here, camping out here, you have Joshua Tree, which Japan doesn't have, the beach, which they do have, but we have more scrubland. We don't have forests. So like very first episode.
There are forests, they're just not in LA.
Yeah, they're just not around here. You have to go quite a bit to go. We did a lot of Joshua Tree and
okay.
Catalina that doesn't have quite that much. So one of the tips is like you use pine cones to start a fire. I'm just like, I never thought of it because there's no pine cones.
Yeah.
If I was in Northeast, definitely. But watching that, Amelia, someone's doing that, right? Dinner time with Amelia, whatever.
Oh, Emiya.
Emiya.
Oh, the Emiya family
Yeah.
dinner?
Yeah.
Emiya cooking.
Yeah.
Basically, fate stay for dinner.
Stay for dinner. Stay for dinner, please. It's essentially, yeah.
Fate stay dinner plans.
There's a lot of animes that are semi-educational, like Koizumi-san Loves Ramen. It's essentially like a little guided tour of like
Yeah,
different
I feel
kinds
like
of ramen.
that's like someone really likes moe and really likes ramen and was like, let's just put the two together.
I would kind of expect it to be funded by like an instant noodle company because of how much educational information try to get you to eat more ramen.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I wouldn't be surprised if it's funded by like the Japanese Tourism Bureau, just
Could
so that
be.
people travel around trying all of these regional types of ramen.
Yeah.
Mm.
There's a bunch of like semi-educational animes now. So
I actually really like that too. I know I haven't seen either one of those yet, but I've heard about them, and I'm a lot more likely to watch that than like another harem thing or another school-related thing or whatever. Those just seem super interesting.
Is there a show right now that you want to highlight, Sam, that of what you're
Yeah, are
watching?
you watching anything?
There's a lot of non-anime, but anime stuff in particular, it's just Pop Team Epic on repeat for the most part.
I mean, that's worth highlighting.
Yeah, so it's very fun. It's very out there. It just seems like they're having a blast doing whatever they want to do.
Do you want to talk about that latest episode?
It wasn't my favorite. It was okay.
One before that was Amazeballs.
Yeah, I mean, they've been pretty consistent, consistently just weird, or almost consistently inconsistent, since each episode is so all over the place. But I'm not even a voice actor nerd to some extent, but it's just neat to hear how much thought they're putting into that part of it. and how much fun the voice actors seem to be having with the show itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that the only consistent voice actor is the one who does the fake previews at the end of every.
Which I
Oh,
want
yeah.
to watch. I want to watch that show.
That'll
that
be the
show
culmination
is
of
literally
the
my
show.
jam.
Yeah, like Hoshiguro Girl Drop is going to be a real show.
Doropu.
If they just finish with one full episode of that with nothing involving Pop Team Epic, that would be just
That would be a
OVA.
great way, a very suitable way to finish the show.
Would it be like their April Fool's episode where they don't do Pop Team Epic? They
Probably.
actually just
Yeah.
do episode 1 and just troll everybody?
At this point, I'm so invested in the story that they put in the preview at the end of it that I actually just want it to actually be whatever the preview from the weekend before was. Like, I don't want to watch episode 1. Are you kidding? I already know that they're like going off to the woods and making out, and they have a rival musical group. I hope it's just like the culmination of events.
Yeah, just that one preview is enough for me. I don't need to actually see the show. I'm happy with that one snippet. And
Well, that's the thing. It's like these shows are so predictable that you can get the whole plot line of an episode with like a 30-second preview.
Yeah, any one of us could write what actually happened in that the other
God,
22
what?
and a half minutes. I mean,
Fanfic.net. Look out
Oh,
for it.
shit.
I'm gonna write this. I'm gonna write this all up. My God.
Daichi-kun.
It's gonna be really bad because mine is just gonna be like boning. Because why else do fanfic? Like if they're not,
AO3.
yeah, they're not having sex.
What's the
What
point?
was the point?
That's a slow burn tag. Come on.
No.
All right, Dana, anything else you want to highlight this season or any show that you've watched recently?
I actually went through and rewatched Sailor Moon R.
Oh,
Okay.
Why
Yeah.
R in particular?
Because a while back, like I started watching the Ann and Al part because I think it's hilarious. Because it's Yui and Tamahome that play the main
right.
characters. Yeah, or that play Ann and Al, like the two aliens. And then at the time, the girl who plays Chibiusa, who's Miyaka, she was playing Sailor Moon because the main actress was sick. So through most of that arc, she's Sailor Moon. So it's Miyaka and Yui and Tamahome again. And I think that's really funny. So I went back and I watched it. And
Do they sound like they do in
no.
Fushigi? Oh,
Well, okay. Well, so Green River Light always sounds like
He always sounds
yeah,
the same.
he always sounds the same. He pretty much. I think the only time that I've seen him actually go against Brand is in one of the Utapris, where he was just like very aggressive and mean. But like otherwise, he's pretty universally Tamahome. And he has a fun. They have fun with it. It's really amusing to me anyway. And then I just let it go because like when I first started watching Sailor Moon in Japanese, I actually started from one of the Sailor Moon R episodes because that was where it left off in the American dub.
Okay.
So when I was able to find them for rent in Japan or like in Japanese, I started like right in the middle. I think it was like an episode where Emerald, who's like the green haired lady, like takes over a dog park. Or like an animal shelter, and then she
Sailor
like,
Moon.
yeah, it's just fucking Sailor Moon. Like, what do you expect? Yes, they go and they beat up people in an animal shelter, and then make the animals evil, and then Sailor Moon comes, and then everybody gets like adopted, and it's fine. Like, yeah. So I went all the way through to the end, and I remember I feel like Sailor Moon for me is kind of like wine. In that, like, as I watch it and as I get older, it becomes a little bit more like I find some nuances that I think you miss as a kid. And I'm sure the writers and the animators for this, like, much like with Sentai shows and things like that, they know that parents are going to be watching this with their kids, so they try to throw something in there that's just a little bit more for the adults, or like that adults would glean onto. Like that's one of the reasons why Sentai actors tend to be really pretty boys or like really attractive girls, is because they know parents are going to watch with their kid. And like house moms are going to be like, I'm all about that Red Ranger.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess that's one way to be able to sit through your kid wanting to watch the same show like 4 times in a row.
Yeah, I'm sure. And one of the things that I was noticing in my old age, I've become a lot more sympathetic to Chibiusa, because initially I was just like, God damn it, these two dum-dums just got back together and this dumb kid shows up and is ruining everything. And now for my old lady lenses, looking back at it, I'm like, yeah, you shouldn't be so harsh. This like 8 or 9-year-old girl traveled back in time to save her parents, who she thinks she's killed, and is kind of not doing the best job because she's 9, and then totally gets like manipulated and like abused by the big bad character, and I'm just like, fuck, man, I give Chibiusa a hard time. I mean, she's got no excuses in part 3, but in R, I'm just like, that was rough.
Kate, what have you been up to?
I've kind of fallen off from keeping up with most of the new shows this season. I think the only one I'm still consistently watching is Pop Team Epic, and half of that is just because it's impossible to predict what they're gonna do next.
Yeah.
Like I know it will be weird and somehow entertaining, and it's really fun to look up like who they're casting every week and what the connections are.
Can we universally say that the Bubunimi
I am not a fan of
I don't
those
like
segments.
them. They make me so creeped out. They're awful.
Like I don't like their segments, but I have a lot of respect for them as animators. Once I saw their like live action, like flipping through the
Hell
notebooks,
shit, yeah,
They're
no.
instantly
The
the
sketchbook
worst
thing?
and best animators in the entire
That
show.
was
It's just like,
fantastic.
oh, okay, they actually do have skills. Like, wow, I am impressed.
Yeah.
But
They're
those
making it-
animation segments are creepy.
Oh, they're so awful. I feel like they're making them like in Flash in 5 minutes. They were like, fucking whatever. Here, let's just do this. It'll be funny. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that takes them 2 days, and they just
Well,
drink a lot of Red Bull.
I feel like this whole show is like South Park, where it only takes them 2 days to animate the damn thing.
Yeah, maybe. I also,
Like they probably spend more time booking the voice talent than they do animating the show.
that's probably true. Did anybody notice that when they did the what is it, the guitar segment, that they on the second episode they actually swapped the voices?
Yeah.
I didn't notice that until
Oh.
you pointed it out to me.
I did not
Yeah.
notice that.
Yeah. Like if you watch it again, it is the same clip, but the voices are coming out of different people.
Ooh.
Yeah. Oh, it was so funny.
I was trying to figure out if something was different.
What's his name? What was his name again?
Hell shit, yeah.
Yeah,
Hell
Hell
Shake
Yano.
My God.
Yeah.
I want one of those books.
Their
Which
notebooks?
you would need both in order to complete the thing. Actually, they have more
Well,
than
yeah,
two
I think
books.
they ended
have like
up going
4
to
or
like
5.
a third and fourth one. Yeah.
Yeah, that was more impressive than any of the Bob me.
Yeah.
Well, those aren't impressive.
No, I hate it.
All right, Garrett. What have you been up to or watching?
I mean, anime wise, I'm still waiting for the next season to drop. So Food Wars and My Hero Academia and all that good stuff can come back on. Other than that, just the normal Dragon Ball Super, which is about to end, One Piece, whatnot. I did start reading a new manga called Hanakaku, which I really like. It was about this little girl who in high school or in junior high, her friend got picked on and she couldn't do anything because she was so weak. So in high school, she's trying to reinvent herself and she tries to join all these martial arts club, but she's so small and weak and tiny that none of them take her because she sucks. And then through meeting someone else, she ends up joining a MMA club, not through school, like an actual legit MMA club. And it's pretty cool. Like I like it. It's a little slapsticky, but it's still a little more on the realism side. Like it's not like what's
Don't
that?
like crazy super moves.
No, it's not like that. At least not that I've seen yet.
It's more
not Haikyuu, but
more.
yeah, not like Haikyuu style sports or Kuruko or what is that? Hajime. Thank you. Hajime no Ippo is what I was thinking of. It's more realistic when it comes to the actual fighting. At least what I've seen so far. It's
Is it a
relatively new.
boys or girls? Is it shonen or shoujo comic?
It's I guess shoujo. It's I don't know.
It might be shonen.
Well, I mean, do you know what publisher puts
No,
it out?
I have no idea.
Okay. All right, we'll figure that out then.
Yeah, but I'm liking it. That's really all I've been doing. And then I watched the Full Metal Alchemist live action movie, which is hot garbage. It's not as bad as Death Note, but it's still pretty bad.
I guess
Unfortunately.
like in the pantheon of live action anime adaptations, I wonder how it ranks. 'Cause I have not watched it yet, but it keeps popping up on my Netflix, so it will
Yeah.
be soon.
They're pushing it pretty hard.
Yeah. Well, I think they probably sunk some money into it to get it made.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, there is like it doesn't look cheap, although there's some things that do look bad.
I
when
feel
CG
like
comes,
that's
but-
basically that describes Japan sometimes. Like I feel like sometimes they decide to do CG on certain things when honestly a practical effect might look better or
Yeah.
Right.
or whoever is doing it maybe isn't the best equipped to do that moment. Like one of the only times I've actually seen something where I really liked everything across the board, I think in recent memory, Blade of the Immortal had really good blood effect and really good like their CG was very subtle, and then also the JoJo live action movie. Like I thought that the way that they did the stands were A+.
It's really weird how that's Mike and Mike.
And Mike. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Kenshin also. Kenshin was pretty
Yeah,
good. But
Kenshin
even
was
then,
good.
like the blood stuff, I feel like with the blood for Kenshin, they CG'd so much of it that I'm just like, this is distracting.
Right. And to be fair, like compared to FMA where there's a lot more that needs to be CGI. But
Yeah.
I feel kind of bad when I'm like, I've seen a better cosplay of Alphonse than in this movie.
Oh no.
That's
But
true,
to be fair,
actually.
they don't like the cosplayers aren't jumping around in full armor.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I get it. Like they can only go so far with that, but at the same time, it's like,
Yeah.
like even when he's just standing there, I kind of wish you just grabbed a cosplayer because that would look a lot better. When he's not really moving around, it would have been. I don't know.
Rough.
Dennis, what have you been up to?
Voltron season 5 doesn't count as anime, so
It's like
It's
halfway there.
animated.
It's anime
So,
influenced.
it's funny seeing the different political intrigue aspects are going on between Record of Grand Crest War and Basilisk, the Okan Ninja Scrolls.
Oh, okay.
I'm liking Basilisk more, though I still have a hard time figuring out what the actual story is going on in that. They did just do a time skip in the middle of the season, so now the kids are more in their teens or late teens probably. So like, okay, now it would make more sense if they're going up against a whole bunch of like ninja, like grandmaster ninja adults. Sure, okay.
I was going to ask about Grand Crest. What do you think of that? I was going to look into
It's not great, but it's okay.
Have you seen the last episode yet?
I haven't seen the most
Oh,
recent
God.
episode. The last episode I saw, it's still dealing with the whole fallout of someone's attempt to become a new emperor, and he like respectfully declined. And they're like, "Oh, well, I guess we'll just stick with the current ruler that we have." Then, okay.
No,
Yeah.
don't ask
awkward.
Dennis about anime you haven't seen yet.
I'm trying not to spoil this stuff for it.
The
so.
most recent episode took a very sharp turn, so
Oh, okay.
which we'll just talk about it after everybody's caught up because
No, I think it's
Yeah.
just me that's going to get caught up.
Oh,
Yeah, so
that's
you
right.
guys can go whisper in a corner.
Okay.
I've been watching Fate Extra with Ed.
yes,
Nice.
yes,
yeah,
we have.
it's
It's very shafty.
yeah. Well, I'm excited because I hear
Needles.
that the most recent episode has some
Yunakuri, Gekidan Yunakuri. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those guys are still around. Are they still doing the same kind of animation they were doing in Madoka?
It looks straight out of
yeah.
Monica. An
Oh.
episode,
Yeah.
yeah. The most recent.
Someone brought up that they were hoping that if they brought in this character named Nursery Rhyme, that it was going to have Inukuri, and it does. And I'm actually really excited to see that. I've been enjoying some of it, and then I've been really disappointed with the animation quality because it's middling at best. The opening looks like something that was done by college students, and I'm like, I don't know. Like I'm. There's a lot going on. The redesigns that they put onto Extra Saber's jacket, though, I really like. I really like some of the stuff, but then otherwise, I'm just like, she's got blonde blob hair, and
Yeah.
it does also suffer from protagonist Kun, who is super protagonisty.
It's just kind of a
he's
weird
blind.
time right now when you got like there's a new thing from the Record of Lotus War people, and there's a new Fate, and the most interesting thing looks like it's been drawn in Microsoft Paint because
Yeah.
it's Pop Team Epic.
Oh yeah,
It's very
yeah.
weird.
Without a doubt. For every time that I'm disappointed by an anime, like I am so not disappointed by Pop Team Epic.
All right. Well,
What are you watching, Ed?
for my part, I'm still watching pretty much the same of everything, except I also dropped Darling.
Yeah, I mean, like Trigger's so hit or miss. Like
Yeah.
the animation is usually great, but the story is kind of falling down.
If you want to watch that story, just go watch Die Buster.
But the one I do want to highlight is Violet Evergarden, since
Oh, that's right.
It's-
So is that still going well?
it's going really well. Everything still looks extremely pretty. Like I've not seen any noticeable drop in animation quality, which is
Wow.
absurd.
That's the
Wow.
best thing that we've seen in quite a while. Like visually, it's
Yeah.
fucking gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
so they've,
still gorgeous.
I feel like they either must have like prepped a lot of it ahead of time, or they are actually literally killing people to get it finished.
I think they're probably killing people, but that's okay because it looks great.
Netflix is probably throwing down all the money to get it looking good.
Yeah,
I hope
that-
Netflix is
that's
paying the
true.
hospital bills.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Seriously.
It's been kind of a slow burn of a series, and I haven't watched I haven't read the original books. It may be like this in the book too, but the last 2 episodes have finally started picking up the plot, so
Okay.
I'm all there for it.
Nice.
All right. Well, so in terms of any other news in the anime world,
Did anyone watch any of the Crunchyroll Awards stuff?
No.
I didn't watch it.
Just a quick shout out to the Crunchyroll peeps. If you're gonna have a judging panel, maybe put an Asian on it.
That was a interesting concern.
It was a lot of
yes.
white people.
A big pile of white people. As a white person, I think that there are not enough Asians.
I thought what was interesting about it was the winner. Like, it was mostly My Hero Academia, the award show, but the best anime that they chose wasn't even on Crunchyroll. It was Made in Abyss, which was on Amazon Anime Strike at the time, now Amazon Prime. So
Yeah, I appreciate that they are
Inclusive.
including
branching out
stuff
to, like,
that is not
all
running on
anime.
their own particular service.
Yeah.
But I sort of feel like if they kept it to stuff that was only on Crunchyroll, then it wouldn't even be valid as an awards show.
Yeah, that's true. That's
So-
why they call it the Anime Awards, not just the Crunchyroll
Yeah.
Awards.
I also I had a bunch of friends of mine who do anime related news, and apparently there was no press.
Yeah.
So, if you're listening and you think that there should be maybe some more representation at the anime awards, the stuff based in Asia. And if you'd like to see more press coverage of it outside of a couple of people, at Crunchyroll on Twitter, they listen to that kind of stuff.
I basically had to wait for the next day for all the stuff to get posted for the news, or otherwise
Oh no, I mean people they didn't have a press person at all. From what I understand,
Gotcha.
From what I've been told by my friends who were just nobody got invited. People were questioning why they weren't there, because they are specifically known as being people who cover this kind of thing, who go to a lot of the shows and the premieres and special engagements for anime and literally have podcasts and
I guess that's a good question. What kind of awards show doesn't want to have press coverage of what they are awarding? Why wouldn't you want to have people have news articles about the thing that you're doing?
Yeah. I mean, and the other part is they did have Erika Ishii. Shout out to Erika Ishii as the host, and she had a fantastic Spike Spiegel look, and she's actually a really great host and a really cool personality. She covers a lot of stuff for Anime Expo as well, and so I was really excited to see a female host, an Asian female host. So that was nice.
Who did any idea who won what? I mean, it sounds like who
There's a
won best of
long
the-
list of
Yeah,
stuff.
it's a big.
It's mostly My Hero Academia.
A lot of it was My Hero Academia won the best opening. It had best boy and best girl, had best fight scene. Your Name won best movie. The ending for Miss Koizumi's Dragon Maid won for best ending, which I actually like the opening more, so I thought that was kind of weird. I mean, the ending's
I don't
cute
think
and
the
all.
opening was nominated though. They had Ancient Magus Bride's opening, which did not win,
And
Which is really good.
which is a shame.
could look up more,
Anyway.
but
Anyway,
yeah,
I'm with you on that.
there was another set of awards as well in Japan. It was
Oh,
the
yeah.
12th annual Voice Actor Awards.
Oh, do you have the? Do you have
I
the?
have the list.
Oh, let's do it.
Just run up really quickly. So best actor was Toyonaga Toshiyuki, who you may know as Yuri in Yuri on Ice.
Oh, a little dumpling.
And Shirobu Kenjiro and
which
Haikyuu.
Yuri?
Katsuki Yuri.
The one that
okay?
matters.
Mean Yuri.
My precious
Not
little
Yurio.
katsudon.
Best actress was Kurosawa Tomoyo, who is Phospholite in Land of the Lustrous and Miria in Idolmaster Cinderella
Oh, I
Girls.
want to watch that. Land of the Lustrous.
It's apparently really good. I haven't seen it
It's
either.
very CG. It's all
That's a
CG.
crystal one, right?
Yeah.
Apparently they
it's
do
like
really
Steven. It's like someone in Japan heard about Steven Universe and then just ran with their own idea.
Best supporting actor is Diana's favorite, Suwabe Junichi.
Ah, Suabe-san.
Victor,
Acha.
both Victor and Makachin
Acha.
and Yuri on Ice.
Did he win for Victor and Makatin?
So they don't really say what they won for. They just said these people had the most memorable roles.
Oh.
Well, I mean, admittedly,
Well, I suppose,
Suwabe is.
if you do multiple roles in a year, it would be hard
Yeah.
to pick just one to nominate
Right.
someone for.
Yeah, well,
Right.
Suwabe is stacked though because he's in every fucking thing.
Yeah,
He's
I know.
also Aizawa Sensei.
He was
My
Aizawa
Hero.
in My
I
Hero.
thought you'd be happy that he won. Are you?
Oh
Trying to,
no! I mean, like, I'm
So
just
you
saying,
cheated?
like, it's kind of cheating because Suwabe is literally in everything. He's Siegfried. He's
Look, if you work really hard, you could achieve your dreams.
listen. I did achieve my dream in 2016. I got to do WCS and I got to meet fucking Suwabe. So
Nice.
checklist.
And there are two best supporting actresses. One is Onishi Saori, who is Eyes Wallenstein in Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon? But I actually know her more as she's Hisako in Shokugeki. She's the secretary
Nice.
girl.
Hishoko.
Hishoko,
She's
yes.
such a good girl.
And the other one was Sakura Ayane, who is Ochako in My Hero Academia, Shizuku in Welcome to the Ballroom, and Bort in Land of the Lustrous. So
Nice.
congratulations to all those winners.
Precious angel.
Any other news? Or let's...
I mean, besides Voltron dropping, but I mean, it's not
Yes.
really anime news. But still, go watch it.
It's exciting. It's exciting news nonetheless.
Yes.
All right. Well, with that said, our topic today, as chosen by Dana, is Macross Plus,
The
the
OVA.
OVAs.
We're doing the OVAs, which were released apparently in the span of August of 1994 to, what was it, June of 1995?
Yeah, so just a little bit under a year there.
Yeah, 4 episodes. So,
Yeah, 4
spread
like
out.
pretty, heavily animated episodes. Like they didn't cheap out on the
40
film.
minute long
This was
ones.
actually one of the first animes to have CG put into it,
Oh.
like have cell animation and CG animation, and like a pretty seamless go. Like I own it on Blu-ray, and I remember like being so excited and watching it on like a good screen, and it still holds up. It's like, sometimes Escafone people are like, wow, I can't believe that that's like as old as it is, because the CG is pretty good.
Yeah.
This is so much better.
Well, hold those thoughts because we'll get into those after the break.
Wait, there's still more info we got to gleam over. Or do you want to do
Don't
that?
we
after
usually
the
do the info after the
break?
break?
Usually do it before the break.
Okay,
but-
fine. Do the info now.
All right. So directed by Shinichiro Watanabe.
Of course.
You know him from like Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah.
Kids on the Slope, Samurai Champloo, a shit ton more. Storyboards were also done by him, along with Shoji Kawamori for doing a couple of stuff too, and Shinji Higuchi. Music by Yoko Kanno, always great. And then we have the mech designs by Shoji Kawamori too. And the studios that worked on this, the main ones, are Studio Nue and Triangle Staff. The current license holder for this is the now defunct Manga Entertainment in the North America, at least. It's still around for UK. So, unfortunately, this is also not in print. So, we'll have to make do with the old copies that we currently have. Hopefully, re-release soon. Okay. Break time.
And now, more after the break.
目の言葉は風ゆく手を教え神様の腕の中へ翼を煽るの溶けていった悲しいことを数えるように金色のリンゴがまた一つ落ちる
The year is 2040 and the galaxy is flourishing with several colonies and advanced technology. AI is near perfection and the current top idol is the near completed virtuoid idol Sharon Apple. All that's missing are her actual feelings, which instead are supplied by Myung Fanglon. Sharon's debut concert is on planet Eden, where at the same time fighter pilots Isamu Dyson and Gold Bowman battle over air superiority for the Supernova project. Isamu, Gold, and Myung were once childhood friends, but after an accident 7 years ago, they went their own separate ways. With Myung back in the picture, the old disputes are once again awakened, and when an unstable and illegal AI technique is installed in Sharon, the situation is worsened. That is a very chaste way of describing this show.
Hey, you can't scare away prospective viewers by giving too much detail.
I mean, I feel like that doesn't do a lot. Like, as the actual successor to the Macross series, like, I feel like if I read that, knowing and loving Macross, I'd be like,
Well, we were talking earlier about how dependent do you think watching this is on watching the original Macross?
Not very,
Well,
in my opinion.
Honestly, like I haven't seen the original Macross, and this kind of dumps you in, and you do understand like the relationships between characters and stuff, but I feel like you're missing a lot of context as to like why do some people look different, i.e. they're aliens.
Zentradi.
Yeah, why are there transforming spaceships? Like that's never really explained. It's just assumed that you know that.
So
Are Zentradi in the original Macross stuff? Or?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
I was just like, oh, they're alien race.
It's like,
Okay,
why is
cool.
music so important? Like, I know music is important to Macross because that's a thing that everyone's supposed to know, apparently, but I don't know why.
Oh, would you like to know why?
Well, apparently I need to watch the first season of Macross.
We're gonna have a whole separate podcast on the history of Macross, or
Music
Well,
in Macross?
music is important in Macross because the aliens didn't understand emotion through song.
Yeah. Well, and then this
Initially.
one, it's like, there's no real alien angle in Macross Plus. Like, that's
Yeah.
not really
No.
any kind of factor in any of this. It's just about interactions between people.
I didn't realize there were aliens until someone like mentioned it while we were watching it.
Yeah.
Like, not even from
it's
the
so,
show.
like,
It's like one of you guys
superfluous.
mentioned it.
Like, yeah, the whole fact that there are aliens and apparently they get along with humans is like not a factor in Macross
Yeah.
Plus, like at all.
It was like, oh, his skin's kind of weird looking, but whatever.
Yeah, so
It's
like,
an
some
anime.
of these people look a little gray.
It was like,
So
there's
Diana,
an
this
actual reason for it.
Yeah.
Diana, this was your choice
Yes.
for the podcast. So
Yeah.
I guess if you want to state what this means to you and why,
But why this choice?
are we opening up a can of worms? But
Are you ready for half an hour?
So I shut up.
Sorry, 45
I love
minutes.
Macross Plus because it at the very core of it, I think the Macross does a really good job of showcasing a love triangle. But what I really enjoy about Plus is that it's not a blatant one the same way that like Hikaru, Minmay, and Misa are kind of like an obvious triangle. This is a bunch of complicated people having complicated relationships.
Well,
they're
it's like
adults.
They're grown-ups.
Yeah, they're adult people. They're
It's not
they're
Are they,
college
though?
interactions.
yeah. Well, no, no. At their base, like
Like none of them are healthy people.
no. But that's the thing is
No.
that they aren't healthy people. They're not very well. Like out of the whole thing, I feel like Myung probably had the best grasp on things in the sense that she was just like, I have a 1 in a million chance of attaining this dream that I have, and it wasn't working out, so let me just go fucking figure it out. I'm gonna just find something else to do.
I
And
don't
that's
get
not
that
healthy.
read from her at all. Like
Oh.
she seems like clinically
Yeah.
depressed and
Yeah.
talks multiple times about how she gave up on all her dreams and she has no emotions anymore, and that makes her
Although she
sad.
is one of the most emotional people in the show.
Yeah, well, she cries
Behind
a lot.
two other
Like she
people.
gets
Oh, yeah.
upset a lot.
she did seem to be the one that was the one person sensible enough to actually have a breakdown and realize how bad things got, where
Yeah,
everyone else
that's
just
true.
obliviously
Yeah.
kind of went along
Yeah,
their own,
I
their
would
own
say
way.
the other characters don't really go through that much development where they realize their faults and try to grow as people.
Well, I mean specifically Isamu.
Yeah, well, no,
Wow.
Isamu's just gonna be like Isamu the whole way through because otherwise, I don't think the plot works.
Yeah.
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 This came out after Top Gun, right?
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know when Top Gun came out.
Like literally the
No,
first
Top Gun is
5
like
minutes of this
80s?
show, I'm like, this is Space Top Gun.
Yeah,
It
no,
is.
I'm
Yeah.
sure it is.
Top
I'm
Gun,
sure
Top
it
Gun
is.
2040.
well, complete with
Top
like
Gun 2040.
Iceman and competitiveness and
The team
The
like
whole upside down.
one of the things that
Top Gun was
Yeah.
86.
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
so definitely. I love that the level of research that they did. So I love this show or this OVA and the subsequent movie. And I love that like when I got the Blu-ray, they actually put all of the special features, and some of them were like we took the mecha designer and the fight choreographer to an Air Force base. Like
Yeah.
they took them to Edwards Air Force Base.
Yeah.
And then they put them in flight simulators, and then they also put them in actual like I think Tomcats,
Oh.
and like got them sick. Like they
that's pretty easy. Like you do
Yeah.
a couple. Like,
Oh yeah, no.
dives.
They have one guy like one. I think it's like the guy who does the dog fighting. It's not what's his face? It's not Shoji Kawamori. He actually laughs at the guy when the guy gets back on the ground.
Oh,
It's really
boo.
funny. He's just like, haha, look at you, you loser. And this guy like looks like he's gonna puke. Sitting there like smoking a cigarette, ha ha ha, what a dumbass. And I'm
and
just
then
like,
they're
thanks,
Why don't you get in the
Kamori."
plane? It's like, no, I'm
He's
not.
like,
that
no, I'm not stupid. Yeah.
guy. Like, I'm gonna keep my cool by staying on the ground.
Yeah, and it's also I also love that I listened to the music before I watched the show, and because I loved Escaflowne, and it's Yoko Kanno music, and I feel like Macross Plus is kind of like the little gift that keeps on giving to me because I see all the different people who've touched it over the years and have gone on to do other work that I really enjoy, and you can actually see this bridges the gap for me, particularly between Yoko Kanno music for Please Save My Earth and Yoko Kanno music for like Escaflowne, because those were it went, Please Save My Earth.
Oh, like
Macross
watching
Plus,
this, I feel
Escaflowne.
like the music is really like some of it is very Escaflowne-esque, and then a lot of it is really Cowboy Bebop-esque. And I know those are both Yoko Kanno, but it seems to be this interesting mix because I would never put Escaflowne music next to Cowboy Bebop music, and this does both, and it somehow fits.
Yeah, there's also a lot of influence with her ex-husband. I think it's Hajime Mizuguchi, who
yeah,
worked.
I saw his name in the credits.
He worked on this, and he worked on Please Save My Earth, and he worked on Escaflowne, and I don't believe he was involved at all in Bebop. But
And I don't know if there's anyone that was involved like crosswise, but it seemed like some of the stuff that wasn't bebop-ish, but the kind of more chanty kind of repetitive stuff felt a lot like the Akira soundtrack to me.
Oh, yeah.
And so I got that kind of vibe out of it. And over the years of listening to this and listening to different soundtracks, those are the ones that I kind of keep gravitating back towards as like background music while I'm working or if I'm just driving. Those just kind of really stick with me.
yeah, I mean, across the board, there's very few songs on the albums because there's four albums for this. For the
one for
OVA.
each episode.
Well, no. There's two original soundtracks. There's a Sharon Apple single, and then there's the soundtrack for the movie.
Okay.
So there's OSTs 1 and 2, the Cream Puff, which is the Sharon Apple single, and For Fans Only, which is the movie soundtrack.
Interesting.
But there's very few songs on it, I think, that I would be like, ugh, not this one, and like skip it. Like, there's a couple that are just like random weird noise, the song.
Yeah, the part where they're like, let's work with the brain thing. And it's just like random beatboxing stuff in there. Yeah.
It's called Bad Dog. Yeah.
Okay.
And even then,
Put that on the soundtrack.
it is, and actually, it's interesting because that's just a snippet of it.
Yeah.
Because then it builds, and it actually has like a really great chant part, and it's got really good atmospheric music. I don't know. I feel like it's so interesting. Also, loving the soundtracks as much as I did when I first got them, and not having seen the show, and then watching it again, like watching it initially and seeing where they cut certain things differently. Like, so for example, there's a song called Santiyu, and when Sharon arrives in Eden and she's going into the stadium, you hear Santiyu, but they took all the vocals out. And they actually don't have that particular cut on any of the soundtracks.
Oh.
And then, like you said, like Bad Dog, they have some like a snippet of that, but you don't hear the rest of the song.
Yeah. I assumed it was like an actual song behind it, or it built it.
Oh
to
yeah, and
something
I mean, and it's
that
a good
played
song.
later, but I guess it didn't.
And then a couple songs overlap. Like the Cream Puff has 2 songs that don't appear on any other soundtrack.
Do they appear in the OVA?
Yeah, Information High, which is the song that she sings in the concert on Earth, and Borderline, which is the creepy, isolating Isamu in the concert.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah.
That one, and those are only on the Cream Puff. I think there's an alternative cut of Information High that's on the movie soundtrack, but Borderline isn't.
So, Kate, go.
I was just gonna say that like it's always like a personal thing for different people for different shows they like and what music really kind of represents that show for them. But like just the same way that like Space Lion and Bebop for me is the song, and then the whatever the title is with the chanting in Escaflowne, like that's for me. And whenever I hear that, of course, it's not only the title, but it just that's associated with it. The kind of clowns or whatever it is in Akira, the kind of one where the children are kind of trying to scare.
Right.
So in a way, that kind of background song that does it for me for Akira, not another main one, but just that particular one. And for here, it's a real obvious one, but just that piano piece that's spurs through the whole thing.
The
You just
dun, dun, dun,
just
that
the
one?
dun, 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 the kind of
the song that Myung sings?
Yeah, because just the beginning, which is just
Yeah.
the whatever you hear at the beginning before even the quote comes up and everything.
Yeah.
Just at the absolute beginning of Macross Plus season or episode.
Oh, voices?
Yeah, just voices basically, but just that beginning of it before anything else happens is just you hear a third of that or just a little snippet.
Yeah,
a
Dennis
couple
was
seconds.
watching this earlier today while I was doing something else, so I wasn't seeing what he was watching. I was only hearing it, and that kept coming up, and I'm like, wow, this is really haunting. Like,
Yeah,
I wonder
it's
what,
not,
what
it's not a
it
Macross
is.
thing; it's a Macross Plus thing. It's
Oh, okay.
specifically for this for me. Like that's the instant association.
Oh, well, I get the impression that Macross, the first TV show, is very different from this OVA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. There's a lot that happens in that. Like you can't just sit down and kind of summarize Macross.
Yeah, well, even
Which is
this
funny.
OVA is like it's half Top Gun and half like weird science like AI stuff, and
It's
then
Hatsune Miku gone evil.
yeah, no,
dare you.
it's like
How
creepy
dare you.
Hatsune Miku, and then Top Gun, and then this like 3-person like adult love
triangle.
triangle drama. So there's a lot going on just in these 4 episodes.
It is very telling. Like when you look at the opening, they don't have an opening sequence. They just have
There's no like opening song.
they just have a like a animated image. It's a CG image of a triangle because they're like, just so you know, it's a triangle. It's a love. Yeah, this is a Macross love triangle. And I thought I really love the image that they use for that. Like that's actually one of my favorite like anime logos is the Macross Plus logo because I thought I don't know, it just looks
Well, it shows up
super,
so much. Like it
super clean.
becomes really iconic of the show as a
Yeah,
whole.
because it's used as Sharon Apple's
Yeah,
logo
it's
as
also-
well.
logo.
Yeah.
The cross is used on Sharon's earrings. There's just a lot
I
of
feel like the logo
simple
becomes
things.
creepy though because it's so associated with Sharon, who is creepy.
Yeah. Oh no. Sharon, like I love Sharon so much because she's so creepy. Because there's so many of her, and she's so like she's berserk. She's gone crazy.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's that whole like she is not human, so she doesn't react to things the way a human would, even if she's based on something that used to be human at one point. Like she's gone way past that.
Yeah.
So it's something that we don't really recognize anymore and we can't sympathize with.
I also love that there's so many iterations of her throughout the show that like when people talk about her, there's different codes for each one. So like they're the one with the shorter hair is the coquette, and then there's the long hair and she's sort of like the demon, and then there's the mermaid, and it's actually really hard to find merchandise from Macross Plus, and as somebody who like loves it and loves Sharon so much, one of the reasons I was so vehement about getting the Blu-ray set, like the special edition Blu-ray set, was because it had an art book in it, and it actually is one of the only places where you can get the illustrations of a couple of her dresses. Otherwise,
okay,
they don't.
So the
They
actual
don't have it.
character designs.
Yeah, the character design settings. Yeah.
Nice.
So, Kate talked a little bit earlier about kind of diving into this as a first watch, and also as a first watch for Macross period. Is this anybody else's first exposure to this?
Mine as well.
So, what did you think, Garrett, about diving into this? Did you feel kind of lost in the plot details?
I wouldn't say
Without-
lost, but I wasn't. I maybe lost is the right word. I was lost on why these characters are the way they are.
Yeah, we don't get any
they're-
background
they're
on that.
not until-
Really.
Their
like, much
motivation
later.
and their choices that they make, especially with is it Izuma?
Isamu.
Isamu. Oh my God,
He's such an asshole.
yes, he is, and it's not even in like but he's enduring and he comes around. It's like, no, you're just an asshole.
He's
He's sort of an
Gets
asshole
away
through
with
and
so
through.
much.
He's a cocky ace
like,
pilot.
At least like Tom Cruise in Top Gun, like you understand that he's an asshole because of his background, and he sort of works through that as a part of the movie plot.
Yeah,
And
Isamu is more
Isamu's
like
yeah.
Iceman. Like Val Kilmer's character.
Iceman's not a jackass. He's just rude.
Like-
he's super like
I feel like they're setting up Gold to be the Iceman equivalent because he's like the calm one who's better at doing everything. He's not the hot-headed one.
Right? Yeah, he seemed more
Like,
like
as a
Iceman to
pilot?
me.
Yeah, Gold's a
But
little more.
Isamu's definitely the one who doesn't change. Like he stays like kind of pig-headed and super easy to anger like throughout the whole thing. So he's the
And no one calls
protagonist.
him on his
Yeah.
bullshit.
Zero
like-
repercussions.
Oh God, it was really frustrating watching this, where it's like seems to be so realistic in certain ways, where like this is a military operation and these super expensive aircraft that they're testing, and this is like dangerous work, and all people's efforts are at stake, and then these guys are just like going around like it's a bar fight, and there doesn't seem to be any consequences for it. Like honestly.
And this was supposed to be his punishment.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
he was
Like,
sent to be
he's too like hot-headed to cut it. Like working with other people, so they're
Yeah.
going to
On
send
the
him to
outer
be
No
a
one
test
wants to
pilot,
take him.
where
and-
he's going to like be tested against his own like mindset, like whether he can really hack it as a pilot.
And his response to that is woohoo. Like,
Yeah,
he's
it's just like,
literally
oh, I get
excited
to
about
fly
it.
fast.
He wants to fly better than anybody else, and so the
Yeah.
only way to really do that, his assumption is the only way to achieve that is to be on the cutting edge of technology. And it's, I don't know, I like that they do have this military, and it's interesting because it's supposed to be 30 years after the original Macross, so it's 30 years after the Zentradi and the Meltrendi and humanity kind of became friends, like
So
made accords.
none of these characters in this appear in the original Macross.
No.
Okay, so it's just set in the same world.
In fact, none of these characters appear in any subsequent Macross, except for the Macross Frontier movies. I think at one point they're like, here is the timeline of famous vocalists that have ever done Macross something, and then they snuck Sharon Apple in there. But the whole idea, I think, when I was reading some of like the Macross magazines that they've had in Japan, is that because of what happened with Cheryl, because Sharon Apple went crazy and lifted the SDF-1 out of its parking place. But imagine if somebody came into Long Beach and lifted the Queen Mary out of its bay. Like that's kind of what they did, except it would be or like literally
Well, like,
took the Titanic out of the ocean.
Like hypnotized everyone in a stadium and then lifted it out of the ground.
Not just everyone in a stadium, like literally hypnotized all the people that make the decisions for everything in your military and all of the world leaders for the alien race that you've only recently gotten to be friends with.
Yeah, so basically bad shit.
It's really bad.
I think it's interesting to consider it like something where it has all new characters that have a single appearance in this one show. Because to me, it really depends on your definition of characters. Because as someone who, I mean, and I've said this on I think some of the previous podcasts I've been on, but like I grew up on Robotech and I grew up on a lot of the older stuff there. And to me, variable fighters are a character, and those are represented. To me, the SDF-1 is a huge character, and to see imagery in like episode 3 and episode 4 of Sharon Apple superimposed over the SDF-1 is a big fucking deal to me. Like that's huge.
Well, yeah,
Having that move,
because it's in the same universe, like it has that continuity. It's interesting to me though that we were saying earlier that so they retconned Macross 2 out of existence in favor of this OVA, and yet none of these characters follow through to any other Macross stuff.
It was a standalone sort of thing. It wasn't. So they actually did something with characters from the original Macross later. They did Macross 7, which I think was supposedly happening before
Before
this.
Plus?
Before Plus. I think in the timeline of events, it's Macross, Macross 7, Macross Plus, Macross Frontier.
Okay.
I think you'll have to, and then I don't know where Delta falls, and honestly, I don't care.
But also the other character that really isn't kind of talked about too much, although you guys already brought it up, is like a love triangle. It's like that was very, very, very Robotech or Macross to me. And seeing that be a central factor here, that to me, that gives it enough, but it's because of inexperience or having followed that before. And coming into this new, without knowing anything about Robotech or Macross, it does seem like it could be really jarring. And just kind of like, what have I missed? It feels like I'm getting dropped in the middle of something.
Yeah, it's at least like there's enough going on that you can kind of get your bearings a bit. But yeah, I did feel like there's a lot that I'm missing out on. There's a lot of context that if I had known like previous Macross stuff, like I would get it. Like that there's a shorthand that I can see, but I can't read it.
I mean, I watched more Macross because of Macross Plus. I will say, like,
Yeah,
I
would go back
watched
and watch the original
Macross.
Macross now because I'm curious about this.
Yeah, and I found that the more I have learned or know about the Macross universe, the more I actually enjoy specifically Macross Plus. because you also get to see, I think I brought this up while we were watching it, you get to see how humans as a race deal with Zentradi and also deal with people of mixed Zentradi race. Like Gold is half Zentradi, and one of the things that they throw out there is like, oh, well, you know, because he's half Zentradi, they get that rage, that Zentradi rage. And
I feel like
that would have
that's kind of
been
a minor
interesting to know.
they'd say it in the
Yeah,
show.
they'd say it, but it
Not
really
at the
doesn't
beginning,
influence a lot of
though.
Yeah.
stuff.
Well,
Like, I mean,
well, that's why
there's
he's
nothing
taking
that
all
Gold
that.
does that Isamu hasn't done already in terms of being hot-headed.
Right.
Yeah, but the whole idea is that Gold is taking suppressants so that he can manage.
He's taking downers, kind of.
Yeah, he's basically taking suppressants so that he doesn't fly off the handle because he's half Zentradi. Because they are basically, I feel like the Zentradi were genetically engineered to be soldiers, and no, right?
It's we'd have to go
Yeah.
back and think through a bunch of things. There's a whole bunch of history between
Yeah.
the different races and everything there.
But
yeah,
and-
but a lot of I guess one of the points is that a lot of that is not given early on in this, and so if
Yeah, I guess
if you've
at
seen
least-
Macross or followed that or even had a synopsis beforehand and then jumped into this, a lot of it is much more apparent, easier to jump into.
At least like none of those specific details really affect the plot here too much. Like I don't have to know much about the Zentradi to understand like when someone's being like they're thinking less of him because of his background. Like I can kind of see that even if I don't understand like exactly what the specifics are.
yeah,
So we can segue that into maybe a discussion of the plot of the first episode, which we've already
Sure.
started
Yeah.
bringing up. How it kind of drops you into
watching
it.
this for the second time because I saw this like years ago. I definitely caught a lot more stuff that like I also didn't realize he was half alien when I was watching it for the first time. I didn't realize about the taking of the medicine to help him out and all that that stuff too. And then since when I first watched Macross Plus, I didn't know about Super Dimensional Fortress Macross, that the SDF1 thing was like, oh, that's why it's named Macross City. Okay.
yeah. It's named
I had no
Macross
idea.
City because the SDF one is parked there.
There's a point where like with the history
Yeah,
of
no,
this,
that never comes up. I was just like, oh wow,
Yeah.
everything's called
I mean,
Macross is here, isn't it?
I feel like Macross Plus is very much like that, like the '93 JoJo, where they're just like, well, fucking catch up, kids. Like,
hope you know what you're getting into.
yeah, they're just like, I mean, you liked that other one. Hopefully, you'll enjoy this one too. And it's what's his face? The director. I feel like
Watanabe.
yeah, Watanabe's pretty ambiguous. I feel like with a lot of his stuff as well. Like he just kind of expects you to catch up. I think with most of his shows, like I feel like even with Bebop for for all intents and purposes, it's just kind of like, okay, well, we're gonna homage a bunch of stuff, so hope you like film and
Yeah.
music. And
maybe
they
that
do.
was easier for me because like I've if you watch a lot of movies and you understand a sort of movie shorthand, and Bebop tosses you into this like sci-fi situation, but there's enough like film cliches going on that you can get that shorthand.
Yeah, I don't know. I also, again, like I was saying with Sailor Moon, the more I watch this, the more stuff I find that I enjoy. And I feel like a lot of it has to do with it being Shoji Kawamori and it being Watanabe and it being Yoko Kanno. These are people whose careers I've been following for such a long time, and am very invested in. So I like to look for the positive aspect of it. So I guess I do have a little bit of like the rose tinted lenses when it comes to this
for
show.
the people who are watching for the first time, I mean, the first episode, the first couple don't have any hint towards like the SDF1 or stuff like that.
No.
So it
Yeah,
really
no,
is just
it just
presented
pops
with
up at the end, and I'm like, oh look, there's a big old robot
But
here.
I guess the question is then for the first couple episodes, it seems like they present the main characters very quickly, and they
Yeah.
kind of just say, well, this is what we're talking about, and this is why we're talking about them. Or you figure out after a while there's something going on. There's a bit of a mystery here, and history was there enough in those episodes to kind of feel full and feel with that being the story, and then with the the creative team behind it with the music and the direction and all that kind of stuff, did it feel together enough, or was it still just kind of
like it? I felt like I got the plot, but there were a lot of details that I was missing. Like it was like having a sort of lighter version of like a full experience. Like I could tell that there were details that I wasn't understanding, but there were a lot of things that they didn't really get into what anything about Macross-ish stuff or SDF or anything like that. But they made sure that the plot worked without it because it was mostly about these characters who you could really sort of understand who they were because their archetypes were very strong.
Yeah.
Like Isamu was really easily understood. Gold is pretty easily understood. And Myung is like crying all over the place. So like she's telegraphing how she's feeling.
It's so like Myung. I've honestly never really cared for Myung. I feel bad saying it because like I get it, and I
feel bad for her. I do not want to be her.
Yeah, no, no.
I don't feel bad for her.
Personally, I feel like Sharon Apple is more interesting to me. Like she's crazy, and that's what makes her interesting to me. But
she's intriguing, but I wouldn't want to get involved with that.
Oh no, I mean like obviously not. Like, but overall, I think probably as I watch it more and more, my favorite characters are Yang and Gold. No, I love Yang because Yang gives the most honest statement in the entire show. It's like, it isn't just your YF-19. And, Isamu is such a hothead and such a jackass.
And then gets punched in the back.
Well,
of the head.
yeah, of course he does because he's like 12. He's like some 12-year-old fucking like.
He does not look 12.
Is he 12?
No,
Did they
he's
say
not
what
12.
his age is?
He's younger than everybody. I think he's like 20.
Oh, okay.
I have it in
he's
one
like
of the art
19
books.
or something.
He's like
right?
19 or 20. He's
Okay.
really young. He's much younger than everybody else.
Okay,
Yeah.
because they keep saying that, but I'm looking
Yeah,
at them.
well,
like,
because
they
he's-
look
design
he's
does
the
not
same
look young
age.
enough.
He was a child genius, I think, is what it was. But
They don't really
and-
establish
well-
that other than like that first scene where Isamu was like, "Who's this kid? Is this your son?"
yeah, but I do enjoy that it does. What I like about having them as test pilots specifically is that you see the team that's put behind this, and they do a lot of like bridge bunnies and stuff in Macross, but you don't actually see like how this tech is evolving and how like you're actually watching the application of the Zentradi and as well as the what the UN Spacey forces have learned over the last 30 years being applied to the ongoing creation of Veritech fighters. And I think it's really interesting having like this team that's responsible for these and having, people like building these because they're YFs. They're not VFs. Like VF is the designation for.
This is going over my head like so far. I can't.
Sorry.
Explain YF and VF.
YF
people who are listening
YF is the
as well.
designation for something that's like your prototype.
Experimental?
The experimental designation, and then VF is your variable fighter that's actually in production.
Gotcha.
So I don't think any of these, I don't think the 19 or the 21 ever actually made it out into the real world.
Well, they destroyed them both.
What?
I mean,
No.
Destroyed the 21.
No, the 19
made it.
came on.
Still good.
I feel like the 21's my favorite, to be honest. Like I love the 21, but I think the closest thing that we got a 24 and an 18.
I was gonna say, like, wasn't there a 22 as well?
I would
The
hope
24,
after
I
this,
think,
like
is,
they went back
for
to the drawing
Fireball.
board and redid their whole test pilot program. So it's not just like two dudes who have like childhood beef with each other as your test pilots.
Right,
No,
so-
no, but they
there
did.
wouldn't
But
be
they
any
did.
drama.
Do you
they
know
did
this
jump
other
directly
pilot?
from
No?
this
Okay.
to.
Oh yeah,
They jumped
full background checks.
They jump from this to a show about a thing called Sound Force because obviously you can hear things in space, and they literally fight the bad guys with like
Speakers?
Yeah, with speakers, and
That might be where there's
Well-
a higher tolerance for absurdity that we
Was
might
this
have
like
because
back in
because-
the day when they were like blasting heavy metal at like the dictators in South America because that was the way to fight it?
no, this is just like literally they were like we've got to figure out how to do a TV show with these two really popular characters from the original Macross, and then they just shat all over it. I'm sorry, I have no love for Macross 7. I have like negative love for Macross 7.
All right. Well, anyway, so our first episode, as we alluded to, introduces us to our hothead pair.
Yeah, the
Well,
space Top Gun.
Isamu
Top
is
Gun
the hothead,
2040.
and Gold, who are frenemies.
Yeah.
Frenemies is a good word for it.
They were friends in high school. It was a trifecta of kids. Myung, Gold, and Isamu
Yeah,
were.
we get that little flashback of their
friends
little
growing
race.
I don't
up.
understand how you get all this context because there's literally like, a couple seconds of you see them and they're younger, but it's like, what were they doing? Where were they?
They were racing. They were there on Eden. Like,
Oh, they were.
high
They
school?
also talk about like when she goes out with Kate and Morgan and everybody. They talk about like she was in their school idol
Yeah.
festival, which is kind of an homage to Min-Mei, who did the Macross Idol, and they talk about how, oh, you guys were so close in high school. What happened? Like, everybody was so friendly when they were kids. And
I feel like I need to watch this 3 more times.
Yeah, well,
because,
I mean,
I don't remember all these throwaway lines.
you, what you need to do is you need to get as drunk as Mike and I get and watch Macross Plus.
Well, at least
I
in
guess we watch
terms
it
of
over
the
and over again.
in terms of the first episode, we don't get any of that yet.
We just get that little tiny little bit of flashback, and then we get the part where after he lands, when they talk about, well, technically after he does his test flight and he goes with Lisa out like gallivanting, she
Not
brings up
Lisa,
a whole
Lucy.
Lucy out gallivanting. When she mentions places to go around there, and he's like, "Oh, I'm familiar with all these places." Because that's where, he says the high school that he was at, which was, on that planet.
Dalmatian High.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dalmatian.
He's like, I am the
original roughneck.
Yeah, the roughneck of Dalmatian High. Like that doesn't sound very bad.
So you get throwbacks there of him having a life on that colony. I was going to say planet, but the colony there. And I'm just guessing
planet.
that
Eden is its own planet.
Okay, and I'm just guessing that Gould is just the same like local hometown boy, always stays there. Hasn't traveled around besides on Eden.
So the pair are, as we kind of alluded to, have been chosen to be pilots for 2 different machines, and
2 different projects.
apparently they're going to face off against each other.
Yeah, Gould has been stable there. Like he's been a pilot there or a test pilot there for a while, and they've had a lot of really good progress with the 21. And apparently they have lost 4 test pilots for the 19.
And yet are still going.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, they all haven't. I want to say maybe all of them have died, actually, because they did say they got promoted.
Like 2 of them died and got promoted like posthumously,
Yeah.
and then 2 are like, what was it, like testing out the health plan?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
So it doesn't seem to be very good, but sure, like Isamu, who's like, barely avoided destroying half the Space Force, is the guy for them.
Well, because he's not going to be anything of value lost if he dies.
He seemed like a pretty
Apparently
good
the
pilot,
YF-19
though.
is something of value.
Well,
Yeah, that is the thing. It's like he is an asshole throughout this whole show, but
He's an asshole. He
They
doesn't
do
respect
show-
the equipment
no,
either.
none of that. But they do show that he does have skills
yeah,
as
he
a
is.
pilot.
He
Yeah.
is I feel like that's something to be said about Macross in general. In Macross, you can be the biggest piece of shit that you want to be, provided you can fly your VF. Like, if you can fly your VF, they'll literally let you get away with fucking anything.
I'm not sure what
'Cause-
kind of message that sends.
Yeah, no, it's not a good message.
Like,
but
this is not a
I mean, let's
you
be
be
real.
what
Like,
you think you want to be
this
as long as you know your shit.
This is the same thing in Gundam. Amuro is a garbage can.
Well,
Char is actually worse. Like he's genocidal, but like that's kind of a trope. I feel like if you look at a lot of anime, mecha anime, it's like this little garbage can flies thing well. It's whatever. Like, the only time I feel like you look at somebody who's like not shitty, who pilots something and does it and is a fantastic like example of humanity, is Gunbuster.
Yeah.
I feel like One-san and Noriko are actually like good people who work hard and do the best that they can, and then also pilot
that is
well.
the primary message of Gunbuster.
That is
so,
true.
Like, they can't contradict that by having the characters be assholes.
Yeah, but I mean, and that's the thing, is like you also kind of get this like juxtaposition between Gould and Isamu. Like, Isamu wears all of Gould's issues on his sleeve. Like, he just sits there with it all just pouring off of him, whereas Gould is just as bad, but he has this very icy exterior. Like, they are 2 sides of the same coin. They just
like
one
Gould is like keeping it all bottled up,
Yeah.
and Isamu's letting it all out.
Yeah,
Gould
and
is like trying to be
neither of
Spock.
these things are. Yeah, but neither of those things are healthy. Like,
Yeah.
none of these characters. Like, I find these characters to be so interesting because they're so fucked up, and that's
probably why they picked they designed them to be fucked up, because it makes them an interesting character. Meanwhile, like, I'm thinking of the practical implications of this program, and I'm like, fuck, no, they should both be washed out. Let's get some like people who can pass a psych eval in here.
Let's get someone who will listen to directions.
Oh yeah,
The best way to handle that is, honestly, just think about the practical implications of a jet fighter that turns into a half robot
Yeah.
holding a gun. And then
Well, I would
if
want
you
someone
can't
who's
get past that,
psychologically
just
stable.
stop watching.
Yeah, I mean, of course, but again, that's
But I can get
never...
past that. I can't get past someone who is mentally unstable holding that robot, holding the gun.
But I also feel like that's something that, as a whole, a lot of us are like, ooh, probably. Like, I wouldn't want any of the people who are in Top Gun to be in jets.
Sure.
Like, at the end of the day, looking at it now, you know,
No,
looking
they're
at
all
it now,
bad.
I
would take Tom Skerritt in a jet.
Okay. but at the same time, I'm just like, Top Gun was a whole bunch of not very well adjusted people either.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I mean, I feel like that's, but you know,
These people
you don't-
are worse adjusted though.
Yeah, absolutely, they're worse adjusted.
It's
but
the future, all right? Look.
yeah, I mean, you know, people got problems in the future. Everybody's got problems in the
The
future.
difference there is I don't feel like I had to adjust my suspension of disbelief for this one. It was just as much as anything else. As much as in Ava, and there is a one-story Bowie knife. Because that is obviously the most effective way for a big robot to kill anything.
Well,
To give it a
well,
beat.
'cause it's
Well, I guess
Well,
it
there's
doesn't-
stuff that I can roll my eyes at, and then there's stuff like I'm just like, no.
yeah, it's not so much
no.
like suspending my disbelief. It's more of just like, why do I care? You're not giving me a
That's
reason
totally
to care
fair,
about
yeah.
these people.
Yeah, it's. I don't really find any of the characters in Macross Plus to be particularly likable. Like none of them. Now that I think about it,
Well, Sharon
like
Apple until she
feel,
starts killing people.
I feel bad
No,
for
even she
several
was
characters.
real creepy at first, and then
and she
spying on
doubles
people
down
and
on the
whatnot.
creep.
That might be one thing where I mean, and I'll
Well,
I'll
first
stop
she's not a
talking
person,
in
and then
sec.
she's like, a psychopath.
Yeah.
So I have no sympathy for Sharon Apple.
Well, but the
I-
presentation of that concept of her and of this idol thing, how many years before we get that now, you know, but like the way that they did that, the way they were able to weave that into the story in a way that was acceptable and people can actually just follow along, I thought was impressive in its own. Like it was neat to show that, and the idol kind of culture there and the fandom of that.
Sure.
Is
And I
really
mean,
neat.
like, to be fair, like, my biggest issue with this show is, like, I actually do, like, one, it looks very good. The animation is really well done. The music is great. Even the overall story isn't bad. It's just these characters is what takes me out of it.
I have no
Yeah.
defense for that because you're absolutely right.
No,
I mean,
they're-
I like them because they're not. Isamu's kind of basic looking. Gold is no, it's true. He's very normal protagonist looking.
He's
And-
90s protagonist personified.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
and I also really like that Myung is not, you know, she's not like some pink haired bubbly person. She's an adult woman, and she's
With
played
flaws.
as an
I can
adult
appreciate
woman.
that. Yeah, there's some
And her
depth
de-
of character there.
And her design reflects that. Her most of her clothing is very it's not incredibly revealing. She doesn't wear like super sexy garb. She wears business suits, like futuristic business suits. I thought, and she's got a very stylish haircut. And
the only time I feel like she wore something actually sexy was when she was going out with friends because she wasn't
Well, yeah,
you know, for
she's
work or
dressing
anything.
up.
And episode 2, I think
Yeah.
it was?
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even then, like, she still has sophistication, and I enjoyed watching people who weren't thrown into like a calamitous event and therefore had to overcome the circumstances that were put in front of them and happened to be anywhere between the ages of like 15 and death. Like, I like that these were people who chose these career paths. Like Isamu and Gold chose to be pilots. Myung chose to be, you know, work in music.
Yeah.
And they were adult people who, you know, had something happen. And I actually really, when I watched it the first time, enjoyed the mystery aspect of it, in the sense that as this was coming out, you didn't really know all of these people and all of their story. So it did unfold. And in between this all, you've got, you know, the sort of base hierarchy and like things that are going on with the project, but you also had, you know, the music industry and the science aspect where you've got like somebody sort of, you know, everybody gets so caught up in their own triangle of garbage that they get blindsided later on in the show when they reveal that the test pilot program is suspended in favor of a non-piloted plane.
Yeah, talk about like future projecting because we're
Yeah.
in that now.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, and they're sort of like, oh, well, you know, we're 30 years into these accords, into this like peace treaty, and how wonderful is it that now we're not going to risk, you know, human life or Zentradi life. We're going to actually have this unmanned thing that's going to fight on the perimeter and make sure that our galaxy is safe.
So do we want to go chronologically for this and like episode by episode, or how do you want to?
Usually we try
Well,
to.
we're
Usually
kind
we
of
do, although we're
things
kind of
together
blending.
now.
So
Yeah,
I
it's
don't think
fine
we have
to go
do
either
a
way.
synopsis for each
Is there
episode
anything
separately,
you
'cause
want to
it's-
speak out for episode 1? Because we keep trying and we just keep going past it.
The only thing I have, and really quick, is just watching with people who haven't seen it before. Because typically my last 10 viewings have been with a couple super fans who
like
kind of quote it
Diana.
all. Yeah.
Basically, it's Diana and Mike, and we have a lot of alcohol, and then we have a lot of feelings.
And so that's the usual experience I have. And so now watching with people who haven't seen it before and thinking, that was why my concern was, is the first episode, does it have enough in there? Is it encapsulated enough? But it doesn't, for someone who hasn't seen Robotech or hasn't seen Macross, is there enough there to be a show or be an interesting thing? Yeah, that's all. That was my big kind of question on it. That's what I was trying to get at earlier.
It's sort of setting the stage in episode 1, so you meet the characters and you see what their situations are, and then they start to interact like from that point on, and then like the further you get into the episodes, the more of the background story gets revealed, and it's like, why do these people know each other? Why do they care about each other? What happened previously?
I do find it hilarious though that like, because this is like Sharon Apple's debut concert in person.
Well, the weird. Why is
Okay,
she
so
so
I
popular?
feel like
this
that,
is her debut.
honestly, like, I don't think that's her debut.
That's what
I think
feel
she
like.
was on a tour, and the tour took her to Eden.
That's what I feel
yeah,
like too.
I feel like that
This
was
is
kind
her
of a.
debut on
It sounded.
Eden.
It
Yeah.
sounded like
Yeah.
or what are you talking about? Like in the very beginning, or
Very
you talking
beginning.
about- Okay.
Well,
Very
the
beginning.
thing that
Okay.
the thing
The
that
thing
I read
that she read
earlier, I don't think that that's accurate. I think that's somebody just like whatever.
I like after reading that description that was on ANN, I'm like, to me it feels like people actually know what.
Oh,
the
she's the
box
most
looked
famous
like.
thing in music at that point in 2040.
Yeah,
I
I
just-
feel like, especially because she has all of these different sort of images of herself, like Sharon Apple is kind of the virtual Madonna of this time.
Yeah,
I just do find
yeah.
it funny that it's a basically floating, or it's a like mini HAL 9000 with a gown,
Like,
roaming around
It's
on like a tripod or
computer
whatever. I
on
don't know.
top of like a ballroom gown skirt.
Well, and I like that they kind of. So for me, I love the concert sequences, a lot. And I remember watching the first episode and being like, okay, so we're gonna have like a definite story. Like this is going to be pretty story heavy. And I had listened to everything, and I wanted to hear the songs that I knew put to these sequences, because I remember watching specifically the concert sequences just by themselves at one point without actually seeing the show. And I actually really, the guy who did all of the concert sequences, he's worked with, like you said, he worked on Akira, and he's actually a pretty awesome illustrator. His name is Koji Morimoto. He did the Franken's Gears in Robot Carnival. He did Magnetic Rose for Memories. He did the Beyond segment in Animatrix. And I think he also worked on Tech Concrete, so black and white. But he did specifically the concert sequences for Sharon Apple. And I feel like those, like, I didn't know what to expect. And you see like Min-Mei, and Min-Mei just does like hollow projections and everything. And I feel like they took the idea of Min-Mei and then just like amplified it in a way that nobody was expecting.
Min-Mei is one of the main characters in Macross, the first one.
Yeah.
Just
and she does concerts and she sings, and they kind of they do like projections and stuff. And I think that like having something where I feel like that was something with Macross Frontier that I was really excited about, was seeing the Cheryl Gnome stuff, like what they were going to do, because Sharon Apple's concert sequences for Plus were so impressive to me, like so beautifully animated, so out of control, and like if anything, I feel like the show is worth it just to watch that, because you come in and you're like, oh, why is Sharon so popular? Oh, because they basically put a wristband on you, like a Fitbit on you, that monitors your dopamine and your mood and how what you're seeing affects you. And then the rig that they have sort of like makes her how you want her to be seen.
Yeah, there's like a 360-degree field, or I'm sorry, stadium for everybody, and usually with a concert, they kind of block out the back, whatever the back
because you don't
half
want
would
to.
be.
No one cares about seeing like the behind of the musician. It's like you want to see the front.
But
and
with
you're
this
seeing
one, you
her all around you, and it's immersive. And it was interesting, the idea of watching something like seeing a concert that is tailored to you, and that's kind of what they have. I feel like with Sharon, with Sharon Apple.
So we haven't directly talked about the relationship between Myung and Sharon at this point.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because they're promoting Sharon Apple as like, oh, she's this like AI idol,
right?
But the dirty secret is that Myung is like the one who sort of gives Sharon Apple her emotions,
right? The Sharon Apple program is incomplete.
Yeah, so it's like Sharon Apple is this virtual interface, and then Myung is like hooked up to a machine that's sort of reading her mind emotionally.
Yeah.
Like, I guess, inject more emotional power into Sharon Apple. Because I sort of feel like, we have like Hatsune Miku concerts now,
right.
And that's all like program computer centric.
Splatoon concerts too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all like sort of computer voices and computer animation. But it's interesting that Macross particularly is like, there has to be this emotional component to it. Otherwise, people aren't going to connect with it. Although, since they have like everyone wearing a Fitbit in the stadium, and they can really like rejigger the concert to appeal to everyone's like personal aesthetics.
Yeah. Well, they
like,
tried to.
Why do they need Myung's emotions?
They know that they
anyway?
can't.
Because Sharon doesn't emote without her.
Yeah.
Like that's the idea. Is they bill her sort of as a puppeteer. So, it kind of like how you put, an actor in the rig for
motion capture
or
a Muppet.
Yeah, like Myung is kind of motion capturing and then projecting onto Sharon. So she basically supplies the emotion for the performance. They don't really go into it that deeply. It's just the idea is they have this big elaborate secret. They work with the Macross Compendium or UN Spacey, which is like the military. So her helmet is actually very similar to Gold's.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's similar technology. And the whole idea is that at this point, everybody is so interconnected that the music industry and like this concert technology is very heavily tied to like the military.
And this becomes more important later, but in essence, what that means is that Sharon is partially Myung, or her thoughts and emotions.
It's interesting that like in like the context of like someone puppeteering a Muppet, like they're really the ones in control. Like they're the ones who are giving that character life. And I feel in the case with like Myung and Sharon Apple, it's more like Myung is getting used to do this for Sharon.
Yeah.
And then she gets cut out of the equation later, but it's like Myung doesn't really have any control over this process.
Well, the other part that was that I thought was really fascinating as somebody who grew up and went to high school and did a lot of singing is Myung had this dream to be a singer, and the only application she could find was literally being this behind the scenes person that does a lot of the work, like all the acting and all the singing for this basically like virtual puppet, like this fabricated idol, and how eventually what ends up happening, like you said, like she gets put out of the equation, and they're just like, oh, but we'll keep you around, don't worry, for appearance's sake. Like to go from having a dream to the only work you could find was the tag of producer, but you're doing all of this work, like you're putting so much of yourself into this virtual puppet, and then being told like, oh well, it's complete now, so you're kind of useless, like, you're obsolete.
Yeah.
I mean, before we even had the concert, when they were promoting it, we had Isamu and Lucy on that bike, and they heard like snippets of the promotion for the concert, and he's like, wait, that sounds like one of my friends. So in essence, like Myung's voice is technically Sharon's, or at least close-ish to Sharon's.
I guess like Isamu can recognize Myung's emotions in Sharon's voice.
Well,
I feel like
Sharon's singing voice,
actress, right?
They are. Okay.
They are not
so
the
Sharon's singing voice. Sharon has multiple singing voices.
Okay,
but her main voices are Gabriela Roban, which is Yoko Kanno's pseudonym, and Akino Arai. Those are her major ones, and Akino Arai provides the singing voice for Myung as well.
Oh, so Myung's like speaking voice is different from her singing voice?
And the same thing with Sharon.
Oh.
Yeah, they both they both have different speaking and singing
I
voices.
feel like there's something on a really meta level here about like what goes into making a character.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Akino Rai, just in case you were wondering, she also did the endings for
Outlaw Star.
Outlaw Star. And the ending for she does interspersed background vocals and stuff for Please Save My Earth.
There's also, I think, an interesting parallel in those developments we talked about where Myung is part of the project at first and then is deemed unnecessary. And it happens around the same time that the military perfects this unmanned pilot plane.
Oh yeah, so all of the hard work that Isamu and Gold have been doing also becomes irrelevant.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, they both reach that point kind of at similar times where they're like, well, what have I even been working towards?
Yeah, why have we all been working so hard? It's interesting that Young is like, what have I sacrificed my youth for?
Yeah, all 5 years.
You
of
can't
it.
even drink alcohol. Like,
Yeah.
what is complaining?
He's been very dramatic about it.
I love Young. I feel so bad for Young. I hope
I don't
he's
feel
okay.
that bad for him. Like, well, I hope he lives through this whole.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
Right.
he got ejected.
Yeah.
He got a little creepy with the hacking and
Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah,
want to talk about the
There's
hacking
some-
in episode 1 that he does?
Episode
Two.
2.
It's 2? Okay.
he was at the concert, right?
Concert.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the concert
Well,
doesn't happen
he
on
tries.
episode 1.
Yeah, he tries to hack Sharon at the concert, and then he's like tries to hack her again afterwards. I don't know.
And at the concert, he's hacking her specifically so she will like look at him.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I was a little confused at that
yeah,
part.
yeah, just so that she'll look at him. He's like, "Come here." Yeah.
Although it's
Creepy.
interesting that like
Idol
hacks-
culture. Idol culture is
hacks-
creepy.
he
Why do you
hacks
jack off
twice
into your
in
hand
that
and then
concert.
shake hands with a girl? Like fucking weirdos.
Yeah, he acts twice in the concert.
That's weird.
Well, it's
Fucking
interesting that
handshake,
he's so
the
obsessed with
handshakes.
Sharon Apple, and then later on he seems to be fine with like trying to fight against whatever is going on,
Yeah.
like with her.
Kind of.
Yeah.
We're jumping around all over the place.
Sorry, guys. I
It's
guess
fine.
the
It's-
takeaway from this is you should probably go see Macross Plus.
Yeah,
we are jumping around, so it's fun to keep it as big themes and parallel storylines. Is
yeah.
what
I
we've been
don't
talking
really
about.
know if we want to walk through a whole
No,
synopsis
no,
of each episode.
Let's not.
Because it gets messy.
So I actually put together a listing because the music for Macross Plus means a lot to me. I love it. It's some of my favorite. It's one of the things that I have like a specific playlist for. So I put together my top 5 Sharon Apple songs.
She's got more than 5.
But
Yes.
drum roll,
Well, I mean,
please.
technically, just my top 5 Macross Plus songs, I should say. So just as like a little like extra bonus, my favorite song that doesn't have any vocals is called More Than 3 Centimeters, which I love because it's got saxophone. It also has a really great piano riff.
You're gonna have to give us some context on when it appears, because none of us are
It's-
gonna know these names.
It's More Than 3 Centimeters is it's kind of the theme when they're not dogfighting, whenever the characters are talking to each other, like specifically Gold and Myung and Isamu. This is the major theme that comes through, besides voices. And that I really like. So number 5 is Information High, which can be found on the Cream Puff soundtrack. It's actually sung by a woman named Melody Sexton, who has done a lot of Dance Dance Revolution songs.
Oh my god! Oh shit! I'm gonna have to look up some of those songs now because that's a really hilarious connection.
Number 4 is off of soundtrack 2. It's called Pulse. The singers are Woo Tana, which I think are... So Yoko Kanno has this history of like making up names based on people that she's working with. And I feel like that's like the first...
Making up names for herself or making up names for the people?
For everybody. like when she works with different people, if they can't bill those people specifically, she'll come up with like special names for them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because of rights or whatever the case may be. Pulse is when they arrive in Macross City and Sharon is arriving to the stadium there. Pulse is the song that's playing. Number 3 is the acoustic version of Voices, which I love. When Myung is in the
SDF.
in the SDF
And
in
when they play
Macross
the
City.
First episode too, as well.
Yes. It's really lovely. It shows, in my opinion, it shows how it's on soundtrack 2, and I think it showcases Akino Arai's voice beautifully. It also shows the haunting power of the song. Like, I feel like the song with backing is amazing, and the song by itself is also just really beautiful. They have a cello version for the movie, but since we didn't watch the movie,
I didn't really like it in English.
I don't like it in English either.
Okay.
But that's, yeah.
I
I also don't think it's a very strong singer.
So for the dub, do they redub all the songs?
No, they just redub.
They only redub voices, I think.
Okay.
Because like Information High, they had some of it in English.
Well, the whole thing is in English.
Yeah, and then the other songs were done in a different language.
Well, the other songs are all done in Zentradi.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Is that what the
Yes.
other language is supposed to be?
well, except for Idle Talk is in French. Yeah.
Okay.
Santiyu, After in the Dark, Asayan, they're all in Zentradi. Also, Want to Be an Angel, which is in the movie. My number 2 song is Asayan, which is billed as the Reich Kutev sisters, which is Gabriella Roban, which is Yoko Kano, Akino Arai, Wuyutana, who's I want to say she's a Chinese singer, and Koko Kotomine. They all sing. It's when Marge, who's like he's basically like if you want to say that there's a bad guy in this show, Marge is definitely the bad guy.
Okay.
Because he's the one who's sneaking around.
He's the
and
evil scientist.
Yeah, he's the evil scientist. Like, the guy who created Sharon, who programmed her initially, was like, we don't want to put an AI in her because we don't know what it's going to do. Like, we don't know how it's going to affect her.
That's the guy with like the black hair, sunglasses.
the ponytail.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Marge is his assistant, who's also one of the scientists, and he's just like, let's shove AI in this, see how it goes, because I'm obsessed with Sharon. And
he's the biggest fanboy.
he is the yeah, he
I
is
feel
indeed.
like between him, like with his glasses, he's really. I draw a parallel with Yang, who is also obsessed with Sharon. So
Yeah.
he's like, if Yang was working there, he would be that guy.
Maybe.
You probably aren't wrong about that. Like,
Maybe.
I mean, when
don't
we
know.
see Yang at the concert, he has like 2 Hasbro-sized bags full of Sharon
Goods.
Apple swag.
Yeah. But Asayan I love because it's all like a really beautifully stacked harmony, and it's not a long song, and that's where Mars basically nosedives into a giant Sharon Apple face. Like, he's basically like, yes, I've now. Yeah, and it's also one of the songs that's used to like hypnotize everybody.
Yeah.
Besides Information High. But my number 1 favorite song is actually After in the Dark, Torch Song, which is the Maya Mane, who sings the ending of Cowboy Bebop. And it's the ending song for this. Like, at the end of each episode, it goes
for the first
into
3 episodes.
Yeah,
then.
for the first 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love that song. I've always really loved that song. It's I don't know, it's really interesting, and it turns into a chant at the end, and I was just like, that.
Yeah. Those verses at the end are interesting. You need a certain kind of warbling to get that across.
Oh yeah, Yoko Kano kills it.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
surprised that like voices isn't on this list, considering how
But she-
important
It
it
is.
is to
The
this.
like number
acoustic one, number 3.
Yeah.
okay.
I was like, what? It's number 3.
So yeah, so in order, 5 to 1, Information High, Pulse, Voices, Asayan, and After in the Dark.
Ah,
Then
okay.
you can find all of those on the original soundtrack, 1 and 2, and the Cream Puff.
So just to close the loop on the plot, as it were, we've got Sharon
So much blood.
was Marge implants the AI / bio emotional whatever chip.
Yeah, basically it lets Sharon become a fully fleshed out AI, and the danger which Marge brings up is that means that it's going to have this strong self-preservation instinct,
Yeah.
which of course means that like Sharon Apple tries to like isolate
She takes over the.
She takes over the SDF one,
Yeah.
and she goes berserk because she's taken on so many emotions from Myung.
Right.
yeah, so
Yeah.
and she tries to kill off Myung because she's like, I don't need you anymore.
Yeah, I'm gonna replace you, basically.
yeah.
Meanwhile,
Although no one ever bothers to bring up, like, so Isamu loves Myung. Why would Isamu love Sharon Apple? We've already seen that Isamu doesn't really get affected that much by the concert.
no.
Yeah, no.
So
So
let's just ignore that detail.
Meanwhile,
Well, I mean, he was pretty creeped out across the board by like he talks about like being creeped out by Sharon Apple.
Yeah.
And not really liking her. And yeah, at the same time, like Sharon's like, well, yeah, I mean, I love Gold too, but I love Isamu more.
Yeah, but although it's interesting that like the way she shows her love for these characters is by trying to kill them off. Like it's fine that like, okay, Gold gets second place, so who cares if he dies? But it's interesting that she's like, because I love Isamu so much, I want to give him what he wants. And what he wants is to feel this thrill of being on the edge between life and death. Therefore, I'm going to try to kill him.
Yeah.
it's very AI machine logic.
Yeah.
I don't watch enough or I don't follow enough AI because it scares me too much to think about. But yeah, I imagine that an AI would probably process down like what it is that they think that you would want.
Yeah.
And I love how they do that, Sharon slowly becoming more aware as she gets tinkered with by Marge. Mm-hmm. Like she's, you can see the effects of what he's doing behind the scenes on her. Like he's doing it without anybody else's knowledge. And so Sharon slowly starts to terrorize Myung and sort of come to realize that she's her own thing throughout in the background of each of these episodes.
Yeah,
like you see her sort of like realizing that Isamu's in the room, or she hears Myung being sad and having a lot of just like, God, I should just disappear. And why am I even here? I'm not doing what I love and I hate it.
Bring up the whole,
and so she sets a concert hall on fire.
Yeah, like
and tries
Myung
to kill
goes
her.
to the concert hall, locks Myung in there and sets it on fire because Myung is like, I'm so depressed. Like, I don't want to disappear.
Yeah.
But
But then
she's
she's also
really strong self-preservation instinct where she's like, I don't want to die here.
Yeah, well, and she doubles down. Like, I feel like Sharon's sort of like, well, is this really what you want? Because she calls Isamu and she calls Gold to see who actually cares the most about her. And I feel like it's kind of Sharon trying to figure out who cares about Myung the most, so who she should probably like
Go after?
Yeah. A bit, but
I mean,
again,
it seems like, at least from an audience point of view, the way she would be viewing it, it's always Gold who's saying, I love you, I want to be with you, I want to protect you. Mm-hmm. Where, but then, I'm going to say his name wrong again.
Isamu.
Thank you. Isamu, every time he is next to her, is like, oh yeah, I got my own shit going on. Come here, other girl.
Isamu's like,
he's very aloof and standoffish when
Lucy
she's
and
around.
Myung at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. But that's the thing. I feel like that is always interesting to me. Like, so one of the big lead ups in the plot is that you find out what fractured this group in the first place. Yeah. The big intrigue was when they were kids, when they were teenagers in high school, Myung and Gold were dating, and there was something that was going on, and then I guess Myung like confesses to Isamu. Gold finds out and attacks her, and he doesn't rape her, but he definitely assaults her. Like he, pushes her down and rips off her shirt. And because he goes into sort of a blind rage, and I'm
assuming that is his half alien, genes.
It's probably it's the battle tendency basically, and that they kind of allude to as being an issue with Zentradi's. What? Which is really shitty, but it's the elephant in the room throughout pretty much the other three episodes.
None of them ever really talk about it, and it's something that Gold has
which
to
is not
remember
healthy.
No.
Not healthy.
No,
we have established these are not healthy people. Like
they
Kate,
do not
for
deal
example,
with things in
they have this one.
ways.
They have these two characters.
We're not talking about me, by the way.
No, not Kate.
She was getting there.
Yeah, so we have these two characters, Kate and Morgan, who also grew up with these guys. They're like, God, you guys, something happened, and nobody knows what happened.
Yeah.
So Isamu and Myung made this decision between the two of them that when Gold kind of like got out of being upset, that everybody just kind of left. Like we're gonna just let Gold believe whatever
ever again.
Yeah, Gold. We're gonna let Gold believe whatever he wants to believe, and we're gonna just back him on that. And kind of like Isamu was just like, yeah, I'm gonna be the bad guy because mentally, like, we love this guy so much that mentally he can't take the idea of knowing what he did, and which is again not healthy.
Yeah, none of them deal with it in healthy ways.
So they bring that up, and I feel like that's actually something that's really important. I feel like the reason why Sharon and Myung are both drawn to Isamu so much is because specifically of that, because they made this sort of like silent pact, and they're so he also wasn't the one who attacked her.
Yeah, so because Isamu's not the one who assaulted Myung, Sharon is like, okay, I love you more.
Most likely.
Does she
Were they actually dating?
know that? though?
Yeah, I wonder like how much of Myung's memories are in
Because they're very
Sharon
kinda,
Apple versus emotions.
Yeah, they're very like they're not clear on that point.
Because Myung could have repressed
they basically
so.
it could also just be like Sharon as an AI decides, well, I love Gold, but I love Isamu more, and who knows, she could just love Isamu more than Gold.
Yeah.
Sure.
Is that the official? Like, I usually watch the movie more. Like, I never. I watched the movie more, and it always seemed like they were in a love triangle. Young chose Isamu, and then Gold flipped.
That's what I got to
always
the
got from the
assumption.
Yeah,
movie.
well,
I don't know which one is the more
Golden and Myung were dating.
Oh,
I never got
is that.
that.
The official?
I never got that.
Yeah, that's the official.
This whole thing is really vague in this.
Yeah.
Like they really don't.
Yeah, it's only a
explain
couple
it
of-
enough to
it's in,
understand
like,
the full context.
Unvoiced flashbacks, right?
Yeah,
so you have
it's just like apparently Gold felt some
Interpret.
right to Myung, so when he saw Myung and Isamu like hugging each other, he flipped out. But I don't understand. Like, so does that mean they were dating? Does that mean she was cheating on him? Does that mean they broke up? Like what was the actual situation?
Yeah.
I think that might be an aspect of like the directorial and the kind of the storytelling style. I mean, it's when you have something like Bebop where you can introduce characters over multiple episodes and have these flashbacks that kind of intersperse through the entire season of the series. And on the far other side, you've got like the Macross Plus movie that we're not going into, but it is just a movie where you introduce every character and flashbacks and the whole mystery and story and resolve it all at once. Here you got something in between where you've got these 4 longish episodes, 40 minutes or so each. And so you kind of establish these characters, but then you have these, the flashbacks are almost spaced out a bit too far, it almost seems like. Or
I
it's
feel like
harder
the
to
flashbacks
keep
are
up with
unclear
it.
about what the whole context was. So in some ways, we don't really understand who, if anyone is the bad guy in this situation other than Gold, who assaults Myung.
Yeah.
But
the bad guy
don't
is
get the-
Marge.
Well,
Yeah.
She means within
out of
the
it.
love
Within the
triangle.
triangle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it does stay pretty ambiguous because, Gold shouldn't have assaulted Myung, but I don't think that Myung and Isamu should have hidden it.
Right, and for me, that's the apex of why this garbage relationship doesn't work for me with these characters, because your reaction to something that was pretty terrible, granted, is to keep it hidden. And even if you felt that was best, then why do you act like shit every time you see this person?
Yeah.
It's like, are you going to like either tell him and then act like shit because that's what he deserves, or hide it? And if you're gonna hide it,
I feel like
hide it.
It's also like kind of a
Well, they're all like busted adults. Like,
Right.
they're
It's
bad.
not it's not just him, it's also her as well, because if this happened to you, generally speaking, like you probably don't want to be with that person. But there are
she
a lot of
doesn't.
times,
Like, there were a lot of times where she's like, I didn't want this. I'm
and
pretty
yet
sure I
when they
didn't want
end up
this.
in the same room together and she breaks down, she's looking to him for comfort.
Well, no, they definitely sleep with each other.
Happen, they leave it ambiguous enough to think
He
they
did
might have-
just save her life from a fire. All right, she's very emotional.
I mean, to be honest,
so that,
like
that
that's
negates being.
no. It's,
I'm just saying she's very emotional.
so
right?
I feel like no, that's not what I get from it. It's a complicated human relationship. Like, I have been in relationships where I was definitely being verbally abused by somebody and I was still dating them and sleeping with them. Like, even though what I was being told and how I was being treated is not how I would have expected of myself to be spoken to or treated, but because I just thought that this was a norm. Like, it's what I liked about Macross Plus was you see a complicated situation. This woman obviously cared about this man, cared about him enough to hide that he hurt her a lot, and still loved him enough that after a traumatic event felt comfortable enough to sleep with him. And that, I think, I've not seen another anime particularly where you see that kind of a relationship or that kind of something just put out there on screen. They're incredibly complex people who, don't make right decisions, constantly don't make right decisions, and, are doing what they think might be best, but it's definitely not, and it's not healthy. I feel like when I watch it, I'm like, they didn't say anything about Gold because they knew he was planning to go and join the military, and at New Edwards, which is the base that they have. And I feel like Isamu specifically was like, yeah, I want to be a pilot, and literally threw himself the furthest away that he possibly could.
Yeah.
Like, that's something in the breakdown of the show where they talk about, like, Isamu went to the fucking other side of the galaxy to go be a pilot, so he got as far away from Gold as he could.
But he was so happy to come back to Eden,
Well, he was excited to become a test pilot. He just,
Yeah.
I don't think he would have cared where he went.
Yeah,
and I don't think he expected Gold to be there either.
I'm also assuming
Yeah.
he didn't expect Gold to be there as well.
And with Gold, the impression that I get, and I watch it a lot, and I love all my books and everything for it, so I feel like I probably have gotten into it a bit more
I
than...
feel like you have a deeper understanding of all of these characters and their motivations.
Yeah,
than most of us
definitely.
are getting from
I'm also-
watching
Yeah,
it.
from a first watch of someone who's never been with this
of course,
series
absolutely,
before. That's just
absolutely.
how I picked up on
and
it.
I feel like there's a lot of stuff that they actually simplify and make it a bit easier to understand in the movie as well. But I do feel like, the way that I saw it was, Gold was being looked out for by Isamu and Myung, specifically because they wanted to track him. He wanted to track into being in the military, and because he was half Zentradi, if there was like a history of violent behavior, they probably wouldn't have let him in. And if she had, reported, or if there had been a big thing, then it could have hurt him becoming a pilot, which is obviously what both he and Isamu wanted to do.
I sort of feel like Isamu should have been barred on his attitude alone.
Right.
Well,
Like,
I
it's his
mean,
personality.
Right. And who was the not the colonel, but the other person who was always
Millard.
Yes.
Okay,
colonel.
Millard is amazing.
He's the
Was he
colonel.
colonel?
Yeah, he's the colonel.
I thought
Yeah.
the
You're
colonel.
thinking of
What-
the general.
General's what I'm thinking.
General
Yeah.
Galaxy.
No,
What a
so
name.
It kind of seems like a little theme going on with this short OVA is kind of just hiding shit from people.
Oh, that's
I think
true.
he also hides the we didn't talk about it, I think, but when they got
This
into
whole
a
accident
dogfight
where-
and
yeah,
the quote
it,
unquote
like, this
accident.
quote accident where they try to beat the shit out of each other, and it's like, oh no, someone must have loaded live rounds into this by accident.
Right.
We
Yes.
have no record of this happening. How could it have happened? I don't know.
Well,
Never mind then.
Our
Right.
super
And the-
expensive thing was falling out of the sky and had to be saved at the last
Technically, that
minute.
was the other fight, because when you were implying was the whole investigation where Millard orders looking into the Halves Andrade background was from the first time, where at the end of the
He
second episode, he pushes
Isamu's
yeah.
Omega 1 or Alpha 1 into the ground.
Yeah,
After-
but that
after
was
getting
after like
rescued.
Isamu got in the way of him like
Yeah,
trying to
Isamu
shoot at
fucks it up.
targets.
Like
No,
they're both
no, he rescued him.
But
yeah,
Isamu
after
him
he
when he
made a
got
big
in the way.
mess.
This was when he was just watching the plane. All he was doing was just supposed to
he was
to watch
supposed
only.
to watch the plane, and then he got in the way and destroyed one of them that sent Gaul into a tailspin.
Yeah. It caused Gold's like reactions and stuff to go off, and that's what caused the plane to like stop
They're both
malfunctioning.
at fault. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
we're going-
but he wasn't in like the new jet yet. This was still
Yeah.
like super
no,
early
he
on.
was in like a tracking a camera plane.
Yeah. So you were talking about the one where they're fighting,
Yeah, I was
actually
talking
fighting.
about the actual fight.
Yeah.
When they
Oh
were
yeah,
both
where they're
in
like
the,
beating each other up on the
the
test
test
sitting
Yeah,
on the ground.
but that doesn't.
Yeah.
That happens with the general, not with the colonel. Like
We're
the colonel
going-
info.
We're going backwards in
Alright.
the plot, actually.
so this shit happens multiple times.
Admittedly, I'm going to go ahead and err on the side of I've watched this enough to know more than all of you. So one of the things that kind of continually goes through this show is the Colonel believing that piloted planes have
Merit.
what?
Merit.
Yeah,
The-
have
the
merit. They
better
make
potential.
They have better potential than
Than the
something
AI
that's
one?
unmanned.
Yeah.
Because the AI can't think with the soul of a pilot. I guess like they can't make those split-second decisions that pilots can because they're going to run on logic. And so he's kind of looking out all the time for his test pilots who are fucking trash cans. And You know,
should have found some better pilots.
well, not every pilot wants to be a test pilot.
Yeah.
I feel like Golden Isamu are kind of shitty unicorns.
The best of the worst.
Yeah, they're shitty unicorns. They're really, really talented at what they do, but they're also just garbage humans.
You have to keep in mind, I mean, like, if you have a trio of self-actualized, like, even-keeled people, we have a very boring show. So that's not what they're really going for this. And even though you've got two shitbag pilots and then a trash fire, you know, in a love triangle, those are the protagonists. Like those are you don't.
Well, this is why I don't like any of the characters, though.
But I'm not looking for an
there's a balance.
antagonist.
Yeah, but I don't like Lestat, but he's a really well-developed character.
I think you can have well-developed and complex characters without them necessarily being garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I would have toned down the garbage level a little.
Right.
Okay,
and to be
so-
fair, like, I'm not disagreeing with anything you see with these characters.
Oh, no.
This is just how I feel with them.
I mean, I am secure in myself enough to know that not everybody is going to love the thing that I love. And while I did yell at you profusely and tell you to get out of my house after you said, you know, that, well, I didn't really care for it. Like, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm married to my fantastic husband. I have my beautiful dog, and I love Macross Plus. It's fine.
Well, and you own this, and you can watch it anytime you want.
See, that's healthy.
On delicious, delicious Blu-ray.
So
Oh,
we
that's
didn't,
so
That is a
beautiful.
healthy way to look at it.
Yeah.
we didn't even talk about the context with which the revelation behind the love triangle came up with, which is after the Isamu and Gold have been deemed that they're not necessary anymore, Isamu gets the bright idea that what he's going to do is just steal his plane, go off and fight the AI plane on his own to show that.
Yeah, and destroy
what kind
it.
of like half-ass security is on this like test base where he can steal his fucking plane?
I feel like
and fly it out of there.
it's a the base itself is on Eden is a more remote planet.
But apparently, there's enough civilians where they can have a Sharon Apple concert. So clearly, there should be some sort of base security.
Well,
It was
yeah,
on the way
but
to Earth. That's all.
Well,
was
I
on
guess
the
it's
way.
kind of
I don't know. Like
Eric-
sometimes, you know, honestly, Wakanda grows fucking plants that give you cat powers. Like, I'm
But
not.
they have a lot of people there.
That's true.
He
they do.
successfully breaks out of the base and causes a lot of collateral damage.
Yeah, but it's okay because he's a protagonist.
It's okay. They
He
send
has plot armor.
He only causes 2 pieces of cloud damage. He breaks the door.
Yeah.
Yeah, he breaks it. He breaks the door.
He breaks
and
the
he
door,
breaks the
and he
gate.
breaks the hangar door. So
Yeah, that's true. He didn't
We're not
kill
even-
anybody.
We're not even talking about the fight that they had.
Like honestly,
in a
if
city.
I were
Yeah.
like the world
Test city.
government, I'd be
Test
like,
city.
wow, these human pilots just caused way too much expensive damage. Like
Yeah.
we're gonna go with the drones.
Well, I
just
mean-
because they're cheaper.
Admittedly, the drone, however, obviously can be hacked because one of the big things is they have this drone set up, and Sharon Apple, because she's a computer and because she's an AI, takes over the
Yeah,
the
the
ghost.
drone-
It's called
She-
the Ghost X9.
she becomes Skynet.
Yeah,
kinda.
Yeah, she's
drone
Skynet's the drone plane.
Yeah,
so they send Gold.
and also all of the satellites.
Yeah,
Right. They
Yeah.
send Gold after Isamu.
because
They arrive-
That's the only plane. No, that's the only fighter that could catch up to them.
That's the only thing that can fold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They send.
by the way, folding space is teleporting.
Folding spaces.
Hyperspace.
It's
Still
also
cyberspace.
it's
like
beautiful
going light
too.
speed.
warp drive.
I love
Yeah.
I love
So-
how honestly I love how they do that, the animation that they use for it, where you have the plane and then everything is sort of reflecting off of it. It's
Kind
one
of-
of
it kind of
Yeah,
bubbles.
it's a
too.
great
It's
use
neat.
of CG in animation because it works because you know it's like a special sort of out of the realm of normal physics type of context. So the fact that this is CG from 1994 doesn't really affect its believability. As opposed to watching something else where it's supposed to be like, oh, this is like normal animation, right? No, except these people move like fucking bizarre zombie skeletons.
Yeah.
So
It's-
no, this use of CG in Macross Plus was actually really impressive because it still holds up.
Yeah. Well, they do a lot of kaleidoscope effects and they do a lot of really interesting layering, and they'll do animation, but then like one of the things, it reminds me a lot of Gankutsuo, the Count of Monte Cristo, except that I feel like, again, this uses it better where they do a lot of layering and texture.
It's like texture and color with
Yeah.
the outlines of the animation.
And specifically when they fold. When they do the jump through, when they go to into
Well, yeah, it's hyperspace.
ether. They
It's like going
yeah.
to plaid.
Yeah. It's
Ludicrous speed.
I think still it's some of the most stunning and like beautiful CG that I've seen in a long time.
So speaking of collateral damage, they decide, or Isamu decides that the way to get through all these defense satellites is to blow several up and use the debris as a shield.
Yeah, well, the whole point is
No,
that
that
he's
was
trying to get
Young's
to Earth.
plan.
Well, it was,
because
yeah,
he
it was
wants
Young-
to
yeah,
go
Young's
to
plan.
Earth and find Myung, who was like suddenly sent to Earth for Sharon Apple reasons.
No, he's going for the ghost initially.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
He
Yeah,
doesn't-
it gets complicated because it's
He
like, oh
basically
no,
wants
Myung's
to-
on Earth and I didn't get to say goodbye to her.
No.
Also, I want to destroy this plane that's my competition.
He was only there for Ghost. Like I didn't think he was there for Myung at all. He was just like, I'm gonna go mess up this.
yeah, Sharon Apple is
we
like
didn't even mention
basically
this whole part where Lucy's like, "Oh, you missed a call. Like Myung was leaving the planet, and I didn't tell you because I'm a jealous bitch. I'm so sorry."
that's rude. I feel like
I mean, it is what happened.
okay,
though.
I'm gonna call you on that. That's kind of shitty to say about women. Myung is a complicated person, but Lucy was like Isamu went after Lucy, and they were sort of casually seeing each other, and then Myung gets introduced into it, and then there's a whole lot of baggage, and then they have this like Lucy and Isamu have this undefined relationship, and she's just like, yeah, I didn't say anything about this because I didn't want you to get hurt again. I didn't want you to go after this, and I wanted you to
That's not
stay.
what she said. Like she literally says, like, I didn't tell you. I'm sorry. Like I know, like you're your own person.
Yeah, I know.
should let you
I know
know
nobody owns you.
Like,
yeah,
nobody
admittedly,
belong to anyone.
no one. How many people do you know would actually take responsibility for their actions, though?
That's true. Well,
I don't. I feel like it's kind of shitty as a like woman to woman to be like, hey, this person with feelings about somebody, let's call her a bitch for being human, basically. Especially when we have an AI who's a garbage can.
Yeah, well, no, Lucy did do a shitty thing by not telling him of this important message
Absolutely.
that I'm sure he would have wanted to hear.
Yeah.
And, make his own decision
And-
about whether he wanted to see Myung or not.
And then she goes and apologizes for it, and
Also,
is
I
better
feel
than
like
most people in that sense.
way his reaction is really interesting because she says, like, I should know, like, you are, like, free to make your own choices. And he almost takes it as an insult. It's like, wow, I don't have anybody in my life. I don't have Myung and I don't have you.
Admittedly, he doesn't do a very good job of keeping people around.
Well,
He's
a
not
terrible person
really
himself.
that great.
It might be a telling of a I don't know. I really do like this show, and I like it because people have different takes on it and different things they're interested in with it, and there's different ways to kind of interpret a lot of what's going on there. I mean, you guys have different opinions on it.
We're still trying to go over the last battle.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's
But
trying to get
people,
there.
emotions.
But and that's what I love about Macross Plus is that it is definitely 2/3 human fucking story and 1/3 dogfight with VFs. And the VF fighting is fantastic. It's really good. And then and in my opinion, I feel like the personal relationships between all the people are also really complex and interesting. Han?
No, it's just like, yeah, the fights drew me because I guess watching the movie, they truncated a lot of the story elements down.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
And so it's just like small story elements to get to the dogfights.
Yeah.
why-
Yeah.
Well,
I think the movie definitely does. And eventually, I
imagine
think
that
we'll
there's more
talk about
emphasis
the
on the
movie
dogfights.
at some
Uh-huh.
point. But
Yeah, also I think like the movie changed the tone slightly. Like definitely people are going out with each other and stuff. So
Yeah.
they changed
Yeah.
kind of the context. So watching this is like, this is a little different from what I watched. It's longer, but it's just like they kind of totally changed stuff around.
yeah, they in the movie they actually make it very obvious that Isamu and Lucy have a thing going on.
Yeah.
it's interesting because this OVA, I really get the impression that Lucy is just like a side piece, like a distraction for Isamu because he's still, holding a torch for Myung. Basically, he is sexually harassing Lucy, like at their job.
True.
Like, I am not wrong here.
Just a normal Tuesday.
All right.
in
I think you guys
Japan.
we should
Fighting on
go.
that
We
one.
should go into the final battle and how.
Yeah,
it's
let's
all- it's
finish up the
basically-
plot and we can discuss
Yeah.
some other lasting
Yeah.
We
points.
could talk about how it's all
So-
Young's fault for her fractured emotional state, kind of corrupting the Sharon Apple AI, and having
Which
it go
is
crazy.
definitely true. Like
So-
her
Golden
fucking
He
baggage.
is a broken person in
All right.
Sharon
Golden
Apple.
Let
Isamu
Ed
have
finish the fight.
created even more collateral damage by blowing up buildings as they're passing by them and having their dogs.
Luckily,
And then
they arrive in the midst of Sharon Apple fucking brainwashing all of Macross City, so it doesn't matter because no one is there. They're all at the Sharon
You at
Apple.
least
Some
don't
people-
see anybody die.
Some people were watching the concert from the comfort of their own home.
They show people in the streets too, like watching
Yeah.
it through there, and then I'm sorry, but there's no way that people just abandon their cars to go to this concert because there's a ton of cars.
I don't know, man.
On the freeway
Some
that they were
randos
blowing up.
opened fire on Myung in their appled state.
It's like the janitors on Death Star, okay? Even though if they don't show it,
I was gonna
some
say
people died.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
it's like a Zack Snyder movie. There are
we
some
don't
people who
even see
died
their
in this.
parachutes.
And it's in the middle.
There's just no way to deny it.
It's in the middle of Macross City.
Right.
Yeah.
It's also in the middle of this dogfight that they have that final revelation where Gold realizes that he's been suppressing the memories.
And he only realizes it after he shoots all his missiles at them for the fucking
And
what is this, like the 8th missile ballet? They're all gorgeous, by the way. Like all the missile ballets are gorgeous.
It was like I bought you lunch twice.
Yeah.
We call it the lunch volleys. Isamu and Gold
Such
spend
petty bullshit.
They
that
are
they were
there,
doing.
but I love it so much. I love that they're petty little shitbags. Like
If
they're
anything,
basically.
I did like that
Yeah.
with their exchange.
Like, I bought you lunch
okay,
twice.
that
I
makes-
bought you lunch 13
I
times.
can see that actually.
You
happening.
kept count.
Yeah.
You broke my high school science project.
Yeah,
Like,
basically, like you
Nope.
broke my plane. No, I didn't. And you didn't give me back my DVD collection.
You left.
You left. How the fuck? Like, because that's the whole thing. Is like you learn more about these characters and their story.
Well, while they're yelling at each other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's I think that's interesting.
See, I wish I almost got more of that between them because
It
even they are.
humanizes them a lot better.
Yeah, because they're definitely yelling at each other, but because it's all this petty shit that they're yelling, it feels like they're a lot closer than what I picked up during the rest
Yeah,
of these
and
episodes.
Young
it's
brought
sad
it
that
up.
we get this in like the last 10 minutes and that's what really humanizes them is them yelling petty shit at each other.
It's like that's like a real brother argument to
yeah,
have.
No,
yeah. As
it's
opposed
true.
to like
It's like, I wish I got
3.5
more of that.
episodes full of like I am a badass pilot. Well, so am I, and like,
Well, you also every time that they interact with another person, it's like, like again with Kate and Morgan and with Young, everybody's sort of like, there's more here than that is being let on. Like they're like, you guys used to be such good friends, and then Young noticing like the exchange between them as Young rode with Isamu to try to help him stop the AI ship to help him with going against the ghost.
Yeah.
And they happened to fold in during Sharon Apple's takeover. Like they don't know that it's happening. And so Isamu shows up, Young puts himself to sleep, they have this dogfight with Gold, and then when everything is sort of, when they figure out what's up and yell it out and then have their come to Jesus, Young is like, oh, I figured that they were going to be good friends. That this wasn't really how they were.
I do find it hilarious that Yang basically has a put myself to sleep thing in his helmet.
oh yeah.
Because let's be real, no one wants to sit in a plane while someone is behind them going, ah!
Yeah, yeah.
Well, he would be the one throwing up. the whole
Yeah.
time.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
after,
why he's like, I'm not a trained pilot. I can't handle G-force and stuff.
after
I'm gonna go to
the-
sleep.
The
Boop.
anime staff went to an Air Force base and flew around in planes long enough to throw up. They're probably like, "Oh, we should have a thing where it's like you can put yourself to sleep if you're in the back seat of this jet."
To be honest,
'Cause
you
that's
would
what I
want
would've
that
wanted.
on just
Yeah.
a normal airliner going overseas. You would just love
that's
that.
literally
option.
how I
A nice
fly.
isolationist helmet so you can't hear crying
And then
people.
Oh,
sleep.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wake up.
It's not
at-
even just that, but I do love that he's like, okay, here's this really crazy plan. Blow up all this shit, and we're gonna fly in with the debris. Good luck. And just goes to
Bye.
sleep.
Yeah.
If I die, I'm gonna die in my sleep.
Literally,
Oh yeah.
like the
wake me
predecessor.
up if it works.
Yeah, the predecessor to what's her face in Star Wars, when she's like, "Well, go find a hacker. Bye."
Oh, to Mascanata.
Yeah, and Matt's
Oh, yeah.
like, "All right, get your shit together. See you later."
All right, so Gold and Isamu have their breakthrough. Then the ghost attacks.
Oh yeah, and then they're
Gold-
both just like, "Well, so now that we are friends, we should probably figure out what's up with this."
Yeah.
And they realize that not only is Sharon has gone berserk, but that she's also taken over the Macross City and the SDF one
Yeah,
and
'cause
the ghost.
they can hear her music. I'm guessing projected, being close to the ghost
Well, they also see
Well, they're flying
Young
over the city.
They also see Young get.
Well, it's interesting that Young gets hypnotized, but it doesn't.
That happens
really
later.
affect,
That happens much later.
So Myung is in
the other
danger.
ones.
Gold
they realize that-
decides that he will fight the ghost. He says, Isamu, you go help Myung.
because
And-
you're the main character.
Because you are the main character.
Well, also, I feel like Gold knows that Isamu is the better pilot.
He is atoning in a way. This is his way of atonement, I feel.
Yeah, well, I'm guessing that Gold is like, now that I've realized that I am the one who ruined our friendship and assaulted Myung, that it's like he should not be the one to go save Myung.
Yeah.
So-
That's got to be pretty awkward. And then Gold makes the ultimate sacrifice.
Gold releases the limiters on his machine, which means the G-forces are bad, and he crashes it into the ghost. And
Well,
is
I feel like
able to
that was
take it
his
out.
whole goal. Like releasing the limiters lets him crash.
Right.
it.
No, he definitely purposefully does this, knowing that's what's going to happen to him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, Isamu, despite almost getting shot in the head by
Yeah.
hypnotizing,
So Young gets hypnotized by Sharon Apple and tries to shoot Isamu. Although I feel like that sort of is going against Sharon Apple's stated goal of letting Isamu get exactly what he wants, which is like living on the edge of life and death, like trying to shoot him in the head from
I
behind.
don't know, man. I feel like
That
that's
is the ultimate
that is-
edge of life
yeah.
and death.
well, she's just like, well, okay, so what is he gonna do? And I think she's also looking to isolate him.
Yeah, because it could have been just as easy if Yang just shot from the back of the chair, shot
Yeah.
into.
Oh,
into
so she
Isamu.
wanted him to know that he had a gun pointed at his head, just
Yeah.
so he could make the split-second decision to eject him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Feel
again,
like it, so.
I think she wanted to isolate him.
yeah, well, she was testing him in some way.
Yeah, and then
So
and
he
then
ejects Yang.
and then
previously,
Sharon-
Yang
and Yang was super close to being able to hack into Sharon
well,
Apple.
basically, like at this point, Yang is like superfluous to the plot because the plot is down to Isamu versus Sharon Apple,
Yeah,
and Myung is basically still a hostage because she's not dead yet. She manages to narrowly escape death several times, but we see that she's sort of still a hostage inside the STF-1.
we get
and
that.
she tries. Like, I think what I do like about Myung is she's pretty scrappy. Like,
Well, it's interesting because she starts out really depressed and like seemingly almost suicidal, but she really has a strong self-preservation instinct. Like she really does not want to die when it comes down to it.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's very typical. People don't always they feel hopeless, but they don't necessarily kill
They're-
themselves.
Yeah, they're not embracing their death when it shows up.
And again, I think in her case, she sees herself almost die in the concert hall and is just like, oh no, not that actually. And for the rest of the show, she is aware of her feelings and she is aware of her the things that she has found to be shortcoming, not what she wanted them to be, I guess. But from that moment, she's not like, I just want to die in the same way. She's just like, it is hard for me to be here with you two, with Isamu and Gold simultaneously. And, because Gold is like, oh, well, we were in a relationship. We can go back to it. I want to be the person that you rely on. And she's like, yeah, but I can't, because she's got these hangups and understandable hangups. They all have a lot of baggage. And, Isamu's like, well, I am here, but he's really there for himself. And so even if she does want to use him as someone to rely on, she can't. He's the kind of person who's like, oh no, I want you to make your own decisions and eat this fucking shitty fruit. And, and find out for yourself when things are disappointing. He's got this really weird way of dealing with things that's not very...
can we talk about this side trip? This is, going back a little bit where Isamu ends up in the hospital after this, not accident, where he and Gold try to beat up on each other. So Isamu ends up in the hospital, escapes from the hospital with Myung, goes off to a forest where
Steals a bike.
Yeah, he steals a hospital motorcycle because that's a thing. They go off to this forest and he's eating sour fruit and making sour faces. And Myung's like, why are you eating that? And he's like, well, you should eat it yourself.
Yeah.
And she's like
I wish that you could just say, oh, it's bad, don't eat it. He's like, you should find out for yourself whether or not it's bad.
Yeah, so she eats it and, oh, revelation, it is also sour. And then he decides to take off on his bike and leave her in this fucking forest because he's an asshole.
Well, he went to go see that bird
let's
dinosaur
go chase
thingy.
He
pterodactyl.
sees like a bird flying overhead and it's like, I gotta chase
It's
this
like
down.
a
I gotta live my
giant.
dream.
It's like
Bye.
a giant dinosaur bird.
Yeah.
And then he says, "I'll be back for you."
Wait, isn't he from that planet? I feel like he's seen
Yeah.
that giant dinosaur bird.
I
plenty
think.
of times.
Well,
But they're rare. Even on
Yeah.
that planet, they're rare, so...
because they talk about that bird's
You
eggs.
gets the shitty end of the stick so
Well,
many times.
they talk about those birds' eggs at one point, like a while back, and how like no one believed him when he said he saw them, and you know, like even Gold and Myung didn't believe him when he said he saw him. So
I mean, dude was in a suspension bath and ripped himself out of it and ran away. So he could have been hallucinating that bird. I mean, you have no
Yeah,
idea
that's
what's going
true.
on there.
Yeah, like really all that I saw was like, oh, he steals Myung away and steals the hospital bike and then leaves her in the forest while he goes off on another adventure. And it's like, that seems to be the story of his life. It's just like leaving people behind while he goes off on adventures.
dude can't be tied down.
For real.
Well, in the end, after Sharon takes Yang out of the picture, she like almost hypnotizes Isamu, or
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's
puts
lulls him to
fucking
sleep
hard on
or
it.
something.
Yeah.
And what brings him back? It's Myung.
It's Myung singing the
singing
song.
her own song.
The song of
not
her
her own
people.
song after she's said multiple times like, oh, I don't sing anymore, I don't like my own songs, I don't like Sharon Apple's songs, like I hate music,
Yeah.
basically, which is why I work in the music industry.
So bittersweet ending because
Yeah.
Gold is dead. They've blown up approximately $10 gajillion worth of satellites and buildings.
Yeah, well, in
and-
the end, like they managed to destroy Sharon
Yeah.
Apple.
But at least Sharon Apple's no longer a threat.
And the SDF-1 settles back down. where
And
it
the
was supposed to.
SDF
Just
one,
like, oh, I will
after-
land now in the same
Yeah,
spot.
after
Go
levitating
back
up
to
for a
Yeah.
couple thousand meters, just like falls back down.
Admittedly, so I'm one of those people in the weird camp that thinks that Isamu died.
And is
I don't get that
and
impression.
it's a vision or what?
Yeah, that
I guess the OVA is really much more ambiguous, where
Yeah.
the movie is very clear, like, oh, he lived.
yeah,
So, yeah.
because in the movie he kind of spotlights on her to find her at the end, and yeah, I was always in the camp. Like, I mean, I feel like it's Watanabe, so you know we don't. I feel like no one's ever come out and said Spike dies
Sure,
in
sure.
Bebop, so I feel like it's a very ambiguous ending.
Sure.
And I felt very much the same way with Macross Plus, the OVAs. Like I just felt like it was a particularly ambiguous ending
Why do you think he died? Like, I'm just curious, because I didn't.
Yeah,
see
I
that.
didn't get that
Because
impression.
he crashes into the
because he crashes
reactor.
in the fucking because he literally like takes himself into the SDF-1.
But then they show like an open space because at least to me, it seemed like he got into the open space where the core was housed, and I don't know, must have shot it up or something.
Yeah,
But I can
Yeah.
see the ambiguity
Did Myung
you're
also
talking
die, or
about.
does Myung live?
I feel like Myung lives and hallucinates him at the end. I don't know.
Okay.
I've always felt like he didn't make it, but
I felt like he made it.
that's
how I
fine.
feel.
He's got
All
plot
right.
armor. He's the
Yeah.
protagonist.
Well, let's,
He's extremely lucky, which they have mentioned multiple times.
he does
Well,
say
luck is
luck
one of his many skills.
Yep.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and talk about the voice cast before we talk about more of our thoughts about the show.
Are there any more
there-
thoughts to be spoken of?
Well, now we
I
get
know
into-
you could
talk about
talk
the
for another
voice
hour
cast.
about this.
I don't want
Diana.
to, though.
Let's
It's-
not
it's-
challenge you.
We can also get into more of the character,
Or the
concept.
art, or the
Yeah.
music, or and other things people want to bring up. But anyway, so starting off, Isamu in Japanese is Yamazaki Takumi, who is also George Desand in G Gundam, and Roy Bay, or however you say his name, in Gundam X. He's Fario in Magic Knight Rayearth, Gillis in Slayer's Try, Kaneth in Fate Zero, and he's also the young version of Revolver Ocelot in Metal Gear Solid 3.
Nice.
He's a
For-
pretty good actor.
He's been in the business for a while.
For the English dub, Isamu is credited as Lee Stone. In reality, Bryan Cranston.
Yeah.
He's done a couple
Oh,
of things.
shit. Yeah.
Yes, that guy.
That guy, that one guy from that thing.
Malcolm in the Middle?
Well, he was.
That was definitely his
Yeah,
breakout.
just that's it. That's all.
Well, really, that was his breakdown.
No.
He was also. Let me finish. He was also Marty Tone in Royal Space Force Wings of Oniomis as well. You are probably also recognizing him as Hal in Malcolm in the Middle and some guy named Walter White in Breaking Bad, I guess. Sure.
I'm sorry. Who is that?
Some guy. He also, other voice acting stuff he has done for anime. I don't have his Power Rangers credits, I'm sorry. But he does Eddie Barrows in the Armitage the Third series, Joe Thax in Eagle Riders, and Lori in Little Women. So, any other things we want to mention about Isamu? Or about the actor?
Well, I think we've talked about how he's a high-headed asshole, like, in multiple different ways.
Kind of reminded me a little bit of Asta from Black Clover, because I feel like he was always yelling.
He doesn't yell that much, I feel, in the dub at least.
Less annoying.
That's true.
In the dub, he talks loudly, but like in the excited way. But it's not like everything is a yell sentence, unless he's speaking to Gold, because apparently he just knows how to press his buttons. But at least in the dub, I thought that Bryan Cranston did he's barely recognizable as Bryan Cranston that I know of, because
he's a bit younger too.
It's like 20 years ago. So
Wow.
Well, I also enjoy so I have the Blu-ray set from Japan, and it has no subtitles for the OVA, but it does have the English dub, because the English dub was actually partially funded by I think Big West is the company that puts it out.
Changed some of the actors, I thought, for the last episode, which I didn't write down, but apparently the original release for this, or at least that manga they didn't use all the same music that was done in the Japanese version, so they cut to different people.
Well, there was also I think I might be remembering it wrong for the English one. There was a very big gap between episode 3 and episode 4 when it came out here in the US. Like, it was like when volume 4 of Macross Plus came out, it was
on
like
VHS.
on VHS, because that was how it was coming out initially. It was a really big deal, because it had been like a significant chunk of time.
Did you guys see who was the voice of Isamu in episode 4 for the?
Well,
the
I know who it is.
Yeah. It's David Hayter.
David Hayter.
Oh,
Solid Snake.
really?
Yep, just for episode 4 for the
Just for
redone
last
one.
Huh.
Taking over for Bryan Cranston.
It was a year. There was like a year between the releases. It was a really big chunk of time.
Right.
They probably couldn't
All right.
get Bryan Cranston anymore. He's probably on Malcolm in the Middle at that point.
All right,
Yeah.
so Gold in Japanese is Ishizuka Unsho, who
Everyone.
we know as Jet in Cowboy Bebop. He's Quint in Wolf's Rain, Mr. Satan in Dragon Ball Kai onwards. Old Joseph in JoJo, Stardust Crusaders. In terms of video games, he's the dwarf in Dragon's Crown.
Yes.
And he took over for Heihachi in the Tekken series
Oh my
after Gori Daisuke died. So.
It's funny you say
He's
that.
also the main character in Magnetic Rose for Memories, which is also another Watanabe.
Yes.
Watanabe loves so many of the voice actors. Like, he uses a lot of the same voice actors in his projects, and I think it's incredibly interesting seeing like who gets recast in his work.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah.
It's hilarious to pick that one, because the English voice of Gold is Richard Epcar, credited as Richard George, who also does Old Joseph as well.
Well, he's in like everything.
Yeah, he is. We've
Epcar
mentioned
has
him before as
so
Bato in
many.
Ghost in the Shell and Genma in Ninja Scroll, and along with Deuce in Outlaw Star. So just a couple of different ones. Let's go with Sloan in Durarara, Inspector Lunge in Monster, and you could currently hear him as Helbrum in The Seven Deadly Sins.
I think he's also Epcar also
He's a
Gemma in Ninja Scroll.
I said that.
Oh.
Oops.
Listen, we're 3 bottles and some sake in, so
Yeah,
I'm not paying attention to what
Bato
you
and
say.
Ghost and Shell, Gemma and Ninja Scroll, and Deuce Night Last Star. I try to mention the stuff that we've already talked about them in, as well as a reminder for our listeners.
So what do we think about Gold in terms of his voice acting performances, at least?
Oh, I love Gold.
I think
I love
he did a
that
fine job.
actor. I love him when he's not being a big shrieky monster. I know personally, like he's one of my favorite. I love Jet as a character, and I really enjoy the work that he did in Memories. I like a lot of his stuff.
Both the dub and sub, I think, are like super excellent for this. for at least for Gold as well. Though character wise, yeah, he comes off as, I can't even say a bit of Nazgul, because they both Isamu and Gold come off as big jerks.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they come off as big jerks, but also as slightly different styles of jerk.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, the two sides of a coin.
All right, Myung in Japanese, kind of as we talked about, her singing credit is Arayakino, who we know from Outlaw Star, but her voice performance is done by Fukamirika, who most people know as Sailor Venus in Sailor Moon. She was Fran in Final Fantasy XII. She doesn't actually do that much, at least anime work. Otherwise, she does a lot of dub work. So she just done a lot of dub work for Catherine Zeta-Jones,
Nice.
Angelina Jolie, and Sharon Stone.
I can see that. She's
Definitely that type of
Sexy
voice.
which is funny because Sailor Venus is definitely very
Much
young and
more
energetic.
bubbly, yes.
Yeah,
Rather
but
than, like,
Myung, I think I love.
Femme fatale-ish in a
Yeah.
way for those ones that you mentioned.
It's interesting to me that the singing voice and the speaking voice are different in Japanese, because if anything, I feel like the Japanese seiyuu industry really...
They push for
like,
singing.
Yeah, there's a strong trend of people being like triple threats where they can like sing and act
Yeah,
and,
but
possibly even
But I
dance.
also feel
Possibly
like a
dance
lot of
or
that is a
music
Yoko
videos.
Kanno choice. Rarely, like she did. These are two Yoko Kanno projects that have Megumi Hayashibara, and she's never used Megumi Hayashibara as a singer. And she is definitely one of those like voice actor, singer
Yeah.
personages. And she's, I mean, I feel like she has like a very, very distinct idea of what she wants to do for vocals and her team and how she wants to build the score and everything. And, who knows?
I guess like maybe that just speaks to the level of control that Yoko Kanno has as the composer.
Yeah.
Because like there's no like if she's able to choose who she wants to have sing for particular characters rather than be like have the decision made for her as like, well, this person is who we cast as the speaking voice, so this is who is going to sing.
It also could be
Remember-
Watanabe, who's like,
well, remember the other time this has happened on a podcast that we talked about is going back to Bubblegum Crisis, where Pris's singing voice, they picked a professional singer.
Yeah,
Who was in a
and
rock band.
So that was like the singing came first and the acting came second.
So it was another instance, and that was not Yoko Kanno, so it was somebody else's choice. But it was another case where the music was deemed so integral that they thought, well, yeah, I know you could probably sing, but let's get a real singer to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Myung in English is played by Riva Spire, credited as Anne Sherman. Her only other major role was Pyorth in Oh My Goddess, the movie.
Oh, wow.
But she was also Zakuro in Ninja Scroll and Jessica Manning in the Armitage Third series.
oh, Zakuro. I love Zakuro.
So any other thoughts about Myung? Actually, she's actually my favorite character in this compared to the guys.
Well, they're so unlikable. Like
They are.
Myung
Yeah.
is at least sympathetic.
Like, I like the aspects of her where, like she tried chasing her dream, and obviously, the soul-crushing reality of being able to succeed in the entertainment business basically got to her. And yeah, you mentioned how she acts like she's clinically depressed, because she probably is. And they even mentioned when close to the end when Sharon's like, yeah, I don't need you anymore because I have taken all your emotions, but we're seeing emotions that she has sort of suppressed over the course of, let's say, 7 years, finally start like showing up again, like her actual like flight or fight response kicking in when she wants to show how she actually wants to live versus just I'm still not sure why she was let go from the floaty cable thing either.
Sharon thought she was dead.
Okay.
Would an AI really get that wrong, though?
Yeah,
I don't know
I'm
about
like,
that.
I mean,
Why not
Yeah.
just leave her there? Even if
That's
she did
true.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think, I agree. I think that Myung, especially like seeing the other works that the actress has done, is a very interesting character because you actually, again, like you see her go through different types of abuse that are it's hard to wrap your head around. It's like a very interesting depiction, and also you sort of see this performance where I as I got older watching the show again, like watching her yell at Isamu and Gold and be like, what do you know? You're living your dream.
Yeah.
Isamu's like, I don't believe what you're saying. You just didn't try hard enough. And Myung just throws it right back at him in the sense of like, well, how can you look down at me from where you are and say this? Because you're actually doing the thing that you set out to do, both you and Gold. You're both sitting there doing this thing that you love, that you wanted to do from a young age, and all the rest of us are just sitting here, doing the best that we can, and
just barely getting by.
And it's extra shitty because here, they have this shared secret too. So for Isamu to be extra preachy at her has got to be like really hard, and I feel like the performance comes through so well because you have this woman who's kind of being like a mom, but also kind of like she's also like kind of pretending to have it together.
Yeah.
And then you also see her break down. Like she runs through every emotion.
Yeah. For both the actresses who portrayed her.
Emphatic teenage girl.
All right. For Sharon Apple, in terms of her speaking role, is done by Hyodo Mako. Not a whole lot of acting credits for her, but we have heard her before as Hamushi in Outlaw Star.
Nice.
She's also Kogane Musashi in Ranma 1/2 and Mazenda in Slayer's Next.
Wow.
In English, Sharon Apple is played by Melora Hart, who has not been much. She's Cindy in Megazone. Thank you, Apple, for correcting it as magazine. Megazone 23 Part 2. Amy Hanioka in Saint Tail, and then Seto Kamiki Jirai in Tenchi Muyo, the Ryo Oki OVAs, along with Tenchi Muyo GXP.
Sharon is such a song-heavy character, and I think it's so interesting with how many people portrayed her singing voice.
Yeah, you said like 4 different people at least.
At least. I mean, for God's sake, like a choir was one of their songs. And I think it's like incredibly interesting. And even now, like I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, that's right. She does talk.
Diana, do you have a favorite design of hers? Because I know you did one cosplay of her.
My
before.
favorite design is the short-haired one is lovingly referred to as the coquette. So she shows up a lot in the Idol Talk. I particularly
short hair with orange hair or reddish.
Well,
that one.
she's got an orange-haired version and a black-haired version for the coquette. I like the orange-haired with the see-through costume. So basically, her costume is the universe behind her, like the starry sky behind her. I've always liked that particular design. I thought that was unique that they did all of her body, and then for what her would have been like her, dress and skirt and the gloves, you just see the starry sky. But I'm also partial to the Wanna Be an Angel, which is from the movie. It's green hair and a purple dress, and I like the mermaid. I like the mermaid from Borderline, and I think she shows up at the end as well.
Yeah,
the long red hair. And it's interesting because like when you see them all, it just looks like Sharon Apple through different ages, but
or like Sharon Apple in various cosplay almost.
Well, no, I mean because her face is rounder as the coquette, and the black hair with the purple undertone with the monster claw, like is kind of the. I feel like that's you see her evolve. She gets to that point as she's being built and the AI is being installed.
Okay.
So I don't know. I feel kind of like Kuno senpai. I would have them all, but no, my favorite is the coquette with the starry sky.
Nice.
Clothing.
All right, next up we have Marge as Hayame Sho, who was Max in the original Macross, Wolfwood in Trigun. He's Aizen in Bleach. He's Tosaka Tokiomi in Fate Zero, and as well as Tenkai / Akechi Mitsuhide in all of the various Sengoku Basara works.
Nice.
Oh yeah, he's pretty popular.
Also very famous / popular, and still working.
Marge is voiced by some rando guy named Stephen J. Bloom.
Yep, some nobody.
Some
That
guy.
guy.
Yeah, it's Spike.
Yeah,
Spike.
Spike Spiegel and Cowboy Bebop. Broderick
Watching
Smith
it in English, I was like,
Indigo.
wait a minute.
Yeah. Wolverine in like X-Men Evolution. God, I'm looking through his credits now. Just there's too many.
It's not really like an important credit.
What's the name of the Toonami kid? Bob?
Tom.
Tom.
Yeah.
He's Tom.
He's the newer Tom.
He was the
second
more
Tom.
second Tom, because the first Tom I think was Sonny Strait.
Yeah, it was Krillin.
Yeah.
It just makes me laugh every time I hear him. He is pretty much all of the I can't think of the names now. The shooty people in Star Wars. The Stormtroopers. He's pretty much all the Stormtroopers in Star Wars Rebels.
Oh.
He's in okay, because the clone troopers aren't him.
Not the clone
Yeah,
troopers,
yeah.
the Stormtroopers.
Gotcha. Neat. But yeah, he's so many people. He's like Makoto Shishio in Rurouni Kenshin.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
His bloopers for Kenshin are amazing.
He's Ko Changshin in Planetes, Orochimaru in Naruto. Just goddamn, there's way too much to read for
I
Steve
feel like
Bloom.
if you're listening to vintage anime like club and you don't know who Steve Bloom is, I think that's
No, it's just like, get out.
go away.
Leave.
So, yeah, we're done with you. How about Lucy? Lucy's pretty famous.
Yes, no, she's up next. Lucy is the one and only Hayashibara Megumi, who is pretty much everybody from the 90s.
Yeah, I feel like
Rama, Ray, Lena Inverse, Faye Valentine.
She was
blah,
in
blah, blah. So for a couple more recent roles for
Why?
her, she was Rebecca in One Piece. She's Miyokichi in Showage no Kurakugo Shinju. And I found out she does Hello Kitty's voice in that Sanrio Danshi.
Oh, nice.
show.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Then don't forget she's
Wow.
also Yuka and Akira in Nazca
Oh,
as well.
yes.
So
Oh,
of
yeah.
course, just going over that.
Well,
Of
everything
course.
from the 90s.
Yeah, we had to make sure that we pronounce it Akira and not Akira.
Yeah.
We have to emphasis on the Q.
Yeah.
For her.
Megaton still rocking it as
Still doing it.
I'm never gonna not be Rei Ayanami.
Lucy's played by Diane Di Rosario, credited as Bambi Daro. She hasn't been in much. She's Akari Kanzaki in Battle Athletes, Rinko in The Legend of the Black Heaven, and then she's also Yukiko in Perfect Blue. She was, I think, the long-haired member of Cham.
Honestly, the other two. Like,
Yeah, they're not important. The other
Yeah.
two, they barely are there. Besides,
Yeah.
a couple of concert things.
Yeah.
Talk about Lucy. We didn't get to talk to her about her that much. Besides,
It's-
Kate calling her a jealous bitch.
Well, no, it's like she's sort of a side character. It's
Yeah.
like she is supposed to be important staff in this, test pilot project, but she's also sort of like the side piece for Isamu.
Yeah.
Character design reminds me of oh god, that one girl from Tenchi,
Mihoshi?
Yeah.
Really?
A little bit of that.
Just because she's blonde?
Blonde, tall, but she's definitely smarter and
Yeah,
more
Mihoshi's
capable.
like really dumb.
I was just thinking like character design wise, I don't know why that just reminded me of that.
Huh. Okay.
Maybe like the same way they
I
wear
don't
their
get that
hair.
at all. They even are like, oh, you have freckles, because he's like, oh, if you stress out, you'll get more freckles or something.
That's
They-
it's
like-
almost as if Japan has a thing against freckles.
They did not have that in the dub.
Okay,
by
good.
the way,
Because
yeah.
that was a stupid line. 'Cause
Yeah.
I'm like, she's yelling at him for doing something stupid in the test plane, and his comeback is to like insult
I
her
think
looks.
in the dub they say like you sound sexy when you're stressed out like that.
Oh God.
it's
I don't know which is
still,
worse.
It still fits
Like,
in
yeah,
with
it fits
the
his character
asshole-ish
well.
character. But yeah,
God.
yeah.
Isamu is just garbage.
All right. Finally, for Millard is Utsumi Kenji, a very veteran voice actor who's active since the 60s, but unfortunately passed away in 2013. He was 004 in Cyborg 009. He's Norimaki Senbei in all of the Dr. Slump versions. He's Rao in Hokuto no Ken.
Oh wow.
He's Genji in Hajime no Ippo and Alex Armstrong in Full Metal Alchemist.
Oh, that's important.
Aw, Armstrong.
Yeah.
That makes me sad. I didn't know that.
Oh.
Millard is played by Bo Billingsley in English, so we are like more Bebop alumni as well. We've mentioned Bo before as the narrator in Outlaw Star, and like I said, he's Jet Black in Cowboy Bebop. He's also tried picking up a couple of other things. Dogen Awakasu in Durarara, Bear Walken in Gungrave,
Oh wow.
Oji Tanaka in The Legend of Black Heaven, and just because I can't not include these because they're important, Barrett in Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, and one of my favorites, Ben Jackson in Tiger and Bunny, the taxi driver guy.
Oh yeah.
And they're making new Tiger and Bunny.
It
I'm
was
excited.
interesting, like listening to you watch the dub because I wasn't watching it and I didn't know the plot when I was listening to you watch it.
But you could hear
But
those
yeah,
guys.
like I could recognize these voices. I was like, oh, that's Bo Billingsley.
Yeah, you're like, oh, it's Epcar. Look at that.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that sounds like Richard Epcar. Is that Steve Bloom? It sure is.
It's hard placing Bryan Cranston since he doesn't do much in
Yeah, but it's like
anime.
whenever I heard a male voice that like wasn't any of the ones I recognized, I was like, this kind of sounds like Bryan Cranston.
All right. Well, that
that's
wraps
it.
up the voice acting. And we've talked about some of the technical aspects of the show, like the music, animation, the CG.
I feel like the music is a very important part of the show, and the
Absolutely.
characters, like the characterization of these people, compared to some of the other things we've watched. Like it's more of the music plays more of a central role.
Should I go with the final thoughts around the room?
Yeah, let's do it. So let's start with you, Han. What did you think?
Yeah,
It was-
since you're more familiar with the movie. So.
Yes. So I've watched the movie many times. So this was the first time watching the OVA.
Oh,
So
interesting.
It's very close.
Mhm.
Some things are stretched out. They filled in some information that they just kind of like
They gleaned
hand
over.
wave in the movie. So it was good to watch this just to get like a little more details, but it's really close to the same. So I'd say
Okay.
like the ending's different. It's less ambiguous. So if you want the more full story, watch this. If you just want to get enough story to get to the dogfights, watch the movie. The movie.
So I guess
is
it
beautiful
depends
as
on
well.
like your goals in watching this.
Yeah.
Like if you're just down there for cool animation or
cool animation and good
Yeah.
good music. So
Mhm.
yeah, if you don't want to skip, how long was this to watch all four?
About
so
2.5
each
hours,
episode is
roughly.
about 40
40
minutes.
minutes.
So it's like about 2.5 hours of animation.
And I think the movie was less than an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
they
The
clearly
movie was-
trimmed
So it's
the
really
pretty
trimmed
stuff.
a lot.
Pretty quick. So they pace things out a lot faster.
I wonder if there are characters that get cut out. Like, do they have?
well, the general's not in the movie. I don't remember.
Yeah, he is.
He is?
Do they have Kate and-
Gomez?
Kate and
Gomez,
Morgan?
I don't think is,
Yeah.
but Galaxy is.
Mhm.
Like the whole
Miller's still there.
The inquiry is cut down quite a bit.
Okay. Maybe some of the dogfights are also cut, like shortened, but
I think
Just more
that
production.
whole
the way
city
that
fight is not there.
they have the city fight in Macross City, but they don't have like I feel like this is something where we've been talking about doing some exclusive episodes.
Yeah.
And I know that Mike really wants to come in and talk about the movie. Okay. So there's quite a few differences, and there's a lot of expansions like on some of the dogfights, on some of the concert pieces.
Yeah.
Like there's a secondary concert that you don't actually get at all in this one that comes with, and a song, like a specific song. So I
Oh.
think that's something that we could talk about more at a later date.
and the movie was released theatrically, right? I'm assuming so.
Honestly, I don't know.
Oh,
I believe that's the case, but
Yeah.
I'd have to
yeah,
double check.
I figured like they make a movie because they're like, how do we get more money out of the people who bought the OVAs?
Soundtrack.
We got to add some new stuff to this.
Sell
So
CDs,
new
sell
songs.
more discs.
Yeah.
One thing I'm getting out of this is that for people that might not follow Macross itself for the earlier stuff, then the movie might be a better way to get a self-encapsulated kind of story. Whereas this kind of assumes that you know a little bit more about what's gone on before, at least for some of the context in there.
Okay.
Sure. Any other final thoughts about this, Sam?
I still
Since
fucking
we're on
love it.
you.
I mean, it's, I've seen all this stuff makes a lot of sense, and for the stuff we talked around a bunch right now. But I still think that like the core themes in it, and even if if the people can be a little one dimensional or like just archetypical kind of characters, it's their interpersonal relationship between three characters like that, all three of which are flawed, that create an interesting kind of interaction or dynamic between all of them. And again, I don't see any of them as an antagonist. I think they're all protagonists with an interesting story that cuts between all of them, and then get that going into the actual battle and everything else involving Sharon and everything else. I think just makes it still a very interesting story.
Yeah. We'll save you for last, Dana, since this is your choice.
I'm sure you will want to have the last word.
So, Kate,
Yes.
Kate, what's your final thoughts on this?
I feel like I need to go back and watch the first Macross series just
It's
to
on
get a more
Amazon.
fleshed out view of
Do you have
all
a
of
month?
this.
Yeah, it's long.
Yeah, well, if
How long is
just
long?
sit down on my own time, like we don't have
80?
to do it for this podcast.
Is it 80?
80 episodes? Holy shit! Okay, well,
I
maybe
didn't remember
I'll-
it being that long, but maybe it
Ooh.
was.
If you're watching, you only watch Macross. You don't need
If it's just super
Just original
super
actress.
dimensional Fortress Macross,
Yeah.
how long is that? 50?
36 episodes.
Oh,
okay.
that's not
Okay.
bad. That's less scary.
That's doable.
I do like the quality of animation in this OVA is really great. And it's amazing that something with CG from the 1990s still holds up so well.
Yeah.
I will say that I feel like while the characters are not sympathetic and they're sort of one-dimensional in the fact that they don't really make any kind of progression over the OVA, they are interesting just to watch them interact. So I feel like this was really good to watch. I really do love the music. It's as someone who's watched a lot of other stuff that Yoko Kanno has worked on, it's really interesting to see this because I feel like I see aspects of a lot of other shows she's worked on in this, and especially this project where the music is such an essential part of the plot. It was really interesting to see her work in it.
Yeah. All right. And Garrett, what about you?
I mean, the animation is really good, especially for its time. The music's great. I mean, there's a lot of things really good about the show. It's just I
Can't
cannot
get
get
into
behind
characters.
any of these
Oh
characters.
yeah, no, I'm with you. I don't like these characters.
And you hit it on its head where they're so one dimensional and just not. I can't sympathize with any of them, and it's hard for me to go on this journey with them when I feel like I'm being dragged along. Again, there's a lot of great things in here. It's not that I dislike this; I just didn't really like it.
Garrett, don't watch Royal
Fair
Space
enough.
Force Wings of Oniomis.
Oh, yeah, definitely don't watch
you
that.
won't like any of the
sympathetic
characters.
Definitely
at
don't watch that.
all.
Don't
Like
watch
they're
that.
even less likable.
Are any of them fun? Because you
Nope.
can have
No.
non-sympathetic.
None of them
They're
are
not-
fun.
That whole movie
No,
is
it's,
not
it's
fun.
like you have someone who's supposed to be a protagonist, but he's actually so awful that you hate him.
Take
Oh,
out,
so like
take
Macross
out the
Plus.
good music. Take out the plot that actually makes sense,
Yeah.
and that's
Take out the love triangle.
Yeah.
Add,
and,
add,
take out
and
the
you
good-
know, add in a whole bunch more rape.
yeah.
Oh,
Add in,
And-
add in
and
a
that's
little more
Wings of
abuse and
Oniomis.
rape. Yeah.
okay then. I
But
think
you
I
know
will
what?
stay away
That
from
when
that.
when the spaceship goes off, it's beautiful.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that seems to forgive all of its sins in
Nope.
everybody else's
Yeah, it doesn't.
mind.
Nope.
So
nope,
for some
I don't
reason,
get
it's a
that,
classic.
but-
Anyway,
Anyway,
Dennis.
I still really like this. It was my first time revisiting this since I watched it, I don't know how long ago, sometime when I was still borrowing VHS tapes. So yeah, I've actually never seen this in English until watching it for this podcast. So I was like, oh my god, Bryan Cranston. And hearing all the more familiar voices, from watching anime on like Toonami and other titles and stuff as well. Like, we're getting to a point where it's like, so many familiar voices that we keep mentioning over and over and over again. So when fans complain about like, oh, Funimation uses the same people, I'm like, guys, it's not like this precedence wasn't set a long time ago by Bang Zoom or the Ocean Dub. So calm down. Yeah, everyone already mentioned about the music. Everyone mentioned about the animation. Still gorgeous. The dogfights, like there's at least one dogfight in each episode. One of them not as great as the other ones. I didn't like the one in the third episode where they fought in the city as much as all the other ones. But, it's just like... It's like picking the worst of the Indiana Jones trilogy, They're all still good, but one of them has to be bad. Yes, Indiana Jones trilogy. You heard me right.
All right, and as for me, I pretty much agree with much of what has been said about, great music, great animation. The story is not full of plot holes like some of the other things we've watched. The characters, not the greatest in terms of likability, but they are complex and at least, reasonably well written and developed. So that's, for me, it's been quite some time since I've seen this. But, I think it still holds up overall. And last but not least, Diana?
Macross Plus is one of my favorites. That's why I chose it, and because I think that it's a hard it's a hard show to swallow. Like, honestly, it is it's a complicated narrative. The characters themselves have a lot going on for them, and it is hard to find sympathy for them sometimes, and it's hard to find empathy for them. You know, Myung goes through quite a bit, and they've all got these very complicated life stories. But I think that when they put it together initially, like with the director wanted to tell this kind of a story. He wanted to break away from, you know, the youthfulness I feel like you got with the original Macross. He wanted to tell an adult story for people who may have grown up with Macross and are now older and looking for something a bit more substantial to take in, because Macross 2 was very disappointing. Actually, it was not very good.
Well, it sounds like it was disappointing to the creators as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have a joke. My friend Taliesin and I have a joke that Macross 2, it was Macross 2 to make money to make Macross Plus, because the change between Macross to Macross 2 to Macross Plus is just night and day. Like, Macross was so good, and Love Do You Remember was so good, and then you got 2 and it was just garbage town. And they did the same thing where they did OVAs and then a movie, and it was just, all of it was bad. And then you got Macross Plus, and it was such a departure. You know, the characters are so uniquely drawn. They are adult human and Zentratis. Like, they're not, you know, your teenagers. They're not.
Yeah, I will say they felt like characters, not caricatures. Like, they weren't really likable to me, and they don't really make a lot of progression as characters, but they did feel like full characters.
Yeah, I feel like these are not people that I would want to be friends with. Although I would want to be friends with Kate and Morgan.
Yeah, they seem lovely. I would hang out with them.
And
their kids. Their kids look adorable.
Exactly. As long as their grandma didn't sell them at the bazaar. Yeah, again, like, I feel like they are interesting. They're interesting in how they're created, how they're established, the relationships that they have with each other, and also how they, like, what kind of people they are in the world that has been built in the future with Macross, like with this technology and with the SDF and the Valkyries and everything. Like, I just think that it's a very unique perspective. It didn't really, you know, they have moments on Earth, but it really took place off planet. And I think that because it was parallel to Earth, you were able to really go into some more unique things. And the music is absolutely outstanding. I mean, when you listen to it by itself, there's so much that's just like orchestral or really strange atmospheric or vocal or chanty. I mean, for like Information High it's a full song by an English speaking woman, and it doesn't sound like anything else in the show, but it still works. Like, I still listen to that song and I'm like, yeah, because Sharon Apple is this megalith, you know, as far as vocal is concerned. I love Macross Plus. I love the movie. I think that it may not be your cup of tea, you know, like with Kate and Garrett, but I think it's worth watching.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for our discussion of Macross Plus. So,
Sorry.
everybody, raise a glass.
Hey, where can people find us at?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Sorry, I got distracted with how long.
What are we going to raise a glass to? We have nothing in our glass.
Put the glasses down.
No, first.
First, Han, where can people find you? Or what are you up to next? Or what are you up to next?
Really. I'll be at AX. Still don't have no Twitter. Still don't have anything else.
All right.
No digital footprint. So, yeah.
Hey, sometimes that's an advantage in today's world.
Yeah.
Sam, how about you?
Typically someplace between the office and home.
Yeah, right now
I'll probably WonderCon, things like that. Usually, you know, as a drafted cosplay handler or bag bitch or something, you know, or just in the dealer's hall hunting down JoJo stuff.
Nice. Diana, where can people find
you can find me on Instagram and on Twitter at Binksy, BINKXY. You can see what my company is up to at Dial C Costumes. You can check us out at dialccostumes.com and also Facebook. And I think I'll be at WonderCon next.
Nice.
What days were you planning?
I think we're badged for all 3 days. but I'm not sure. I have a goal this year. My goal is to meet Sergio Aragonés, who's an illustrator and comic artist.
Is he a guest?
He's a comic artist, so he's at all of them.
He's always got a booth in a
he does
table and
Gru.
does signings.
He's gone to Comic-Con for decades, and
Gotcha.
probably WonderCon as well.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So I'm hoping that he's going to be there. That's my goal. My goal is to meet Sergio Aragonés this year. And then after that, let me see. I will be at Costume Con. And I will be at Anime Expo. And then maybe some other stuff. We're waiting to hear back.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Kate, where can people find you, or what are you up to next?
Well, I will be at WonderCon as well. Probably all 3 days. I'm not really sure what all my plans are. We'll see once it gets closer to the convention. And aside from WonderCon, I should be at AX and Comic-Con. And I am on Twitter at Taiko-chan and Instagram at taiko.chan.
Right. Garrett.
You can find me at WonderCon as well. I'll probably only be there for one day. Probably won't go to AX, but Comic-Con and DragonCon, I will be there. And you can follow me on Twitter at BlackRiku, it's BLKRIKU. And check out our YouTube page, because we are slowly but surely uploading our past episodes plus the newer ones that come out. So like, comment, subscribe. Always appreciated.
Great. Dennis, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at itchnob, along with playing Monster Hunter. I will be at WonderCon for 3 days this year, first time. I've only ever done the weekend, so I'm excited to actually go on a Friday. Should be good. Maybe AX, we'll see.
All right. And as for me, speaking of Fist of the North Stars Rao, you can find me at the very long Twitter handle Ippen no Kui Nashi. And I will also be at AX and Comic-Con next, and probably not anything before then.
Oh.
All right.
For the show, we are lots of places. We have our website, which is at vintageanimeclub.com. You can also follow us, like us, all that jazz on Facebook, Vintage Anime Club, Instagram, Vintage Anime Club, Twitter, Vintage Anime Pod. Garrett mentioned we have a YouTube. There's no shortcut to that yet, so we have to search for Vintage Anime Club just on YouTube. We are also having our other episodes on a bunch of other places. Places that you can find that aren't Spotify or SoundCloud, but things like Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Player FM, Podbean, Overcast, Podchaser, and then just any other places you want. Just add our RSS feed to that. And don't forget to email us as well at vintageanimeclub@gmail.com, and we could definitely use some more reviews and all that stuff too.
Yeah,
So,
let us know what you're liking or not.
yes.
All right. And now,
Now,
let's go ahead and rate us a glass. And I'll bid farewell. I call this meeting adjourned. Kanpai.
Bye.
I think I cheers my microphone. Oops.
All right, today's episode is brought to us by, first, the 2016 original Dark Horse Merlot from California. Dark Horse winemaker Beth Liston believes that fortune favors the bold. Her pioneering approach to viticulture and winemaking champions quality, originality, and above all, taste. A bold wine with big personality, this Merlot features robust flavors of dark berry jam with hints of toasted oak, a complex layered blend. It offers a plush yet distinctive finish. Pour a glass and let us know what you think.
The other one we have is Natura Cabernet Sauvignon from Chile. This is what's it called? 13.5%, and it definitely has the flavors of chocolate and a bit of blackberries up on the front side of it.
We also have a 2013 Arrow Creek Pinot Noir from California. A tribute to coastal California's distinguished reputation for fine wines, this Pinot Noir is deep red in color, showcasing flavors of red fruits and black cherry. An excellent balance of acidity and tannins present a wine with well-rounded flavors and a fruity finish. In the true Californian style, enjoy this wine alongside traditional roast pork tenderloin, or in our case, anime.
Yeah.
All right. We'll catch you guys next time as we go back to
Nazca.
Tawatansuyu, wherever. I forgot how to
Tawantinsuyu?
Tawantinsuyu, thank you. I forgot how to pronounce it.